Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. It's been a bit of a tough week. We're on a later day. We're starting late, but we've got lots and lots of AV questions to get to, so we're going to head right on into it. If Tom can find whatever it is he's searching for down somewhere. Even the video can't see that because the camera's on me.
Your audio went like real quiet. So
all right.
It was a cable thing. I guess I must have pulled on it weird and kind of had it halfway pulled it out. You're like all of a sudden talking from the bottom of the ocean.
That'll happen.
Yeah. Yes, we are starting late. It is my fault.
The day is my fault, so
that is true. And it was
we'll
a very
take
inconvenient
equal
day
blame.
for me to be podcast. I was in a much better place to podcast last night, but that's what it is. My wife was out with her mom. So thank you for all of you who have sent her well wishes. I have passed them along, and she is very grateful as well. Her mom is doing as well as can be expected.
Okay.
So maybe a little bit better than can be expected, than we expected at least a couple weeks ago. So that's not bad news.
People hang in there, man. People are tough. You got to give everyone credit.
Tougher than they think. They got the unfinished
right.
business they want to finish up before they become ghosts. Anywho, so this is the AV thing is just like flopping around on me.
That would be Tom's mic stand for anyone not watching us on YouTube. YouTube.com/C/AVRant if you want to see amazing things like Tom searching for a cable, although you won't actually see that.
And struggling with his equipment.
That's right.
Yes, it is a really nonstop roller coaster of A and V. A and V. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by sending us an email at question@avrant.com. You can hit us up on Facebook at facebook.com/avrantpodcast, youtube.com/c/avrant, I believe. It's not AVRant podcast, it's just AVRant.
Nope, just AVRant on YouTube. But it's AVRant podcast on Facebook. That
is true. Then if you want to email us directly, you can email rob@avrant.com, tom@avrant.com. Twitter, it's at FirstReflect for Rob at AVRant_Tom for me. Our producer, Austin Pond, is available at Austin, TEN Pond. He puts together our question list sometimes, and he does all of our videos all the times, just about, except for the 2-hour one that Rob does.
He puts together the question list. I also put in the question list when whatever is not there, and then I put it in.
There we go. So it's a dual effort, and
That's right.
I see myself in the managerial role. I'm a very hands-off manager.
You delegate.
Very hands-off. When I stop having so many children in my life, I guarantee you I'm going to be much more hands-on with some of this stuff. I was very hands-on when the kids were small. Now they're in this weird middle age where it's like soccer, basketball, and baseball all the time. My life is consumed. Austin has his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast. His podcast, oddly enough, is about children, child rearing, not his own. He actually
I don't believe
reviews.
Austin has any kids of his own.
He does not, no. But what he does is he goes to places with his cohorts, usually like a mall, like the food court, sits there, sets up his podcasting equipment, and then critiques children and their parents live. Most of the podcasts aren't very long. They usually end in a fight, which is
people watching, the best kind.
Yeah, it's a very strange podcast. It's enthralling. I have to say, it's probably out of all the podcasts I listen to, which that number is considerable. This would have to be the one that I spend the most time cringing, and it's like a train wreck you can't look away from. Except that you're not looking, you're listening, and
very good.
It's very stupid. Anywho, all right. Let me turn on to the questions here so we can figure out what we're doing. I've got to scroll up because I was trying to get through some of these questions.
We'll thank our listeners of the week to begin.
Yes, of course. Our listeners of the week this week are Michael and Larry. They went to www.avrant.com where they clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and they gave us a PayPal donation. You can do that as well if you have a PayPal account, or if you don't, that's fine. PayPal will gladly accept your credit card information, where they will hopefully never get it hacked and divulged to the Chinese or the Russians or Donald Trump or some combination thereof. I mean, by Donald Trump, I mean the NSA, of course. So thank you, Michael, and thank you, Larry.
Yes, Michael, Larry, thank you very much for those donations.
And if you do not have the money or the desire to donate to the podcast in that way, and you do want to support the podcast, feel free to find some way to support it on your own and describe that to us in the email. We'll be happy to include you in our listeners of the week. Fred has done that by buying a refurbished Epson 8350 from directly from Epson. That's a projector. He wrote them an email to tell them it was because of us. It may be the first email they've gotten that has done that, but that is good. That is good.
Yeah, Fred, thanks for writing to Epson.
Anthony also let Accessories for Less know they heard about us from AVRant, and thanks to all the money we saved him, he was able to get a Marantz SR6010, which is something he's dreamed of after living with only entry-level receivers for years and years. And let me tell you, Anthony, I know what it's like to buy a receiver that's not like bottom of the line or just like one up from the bottom of the line. Like my second receiver I bought because I like aced my midterms. I wanted to like, or I don't know, maybe finals, and wanted to treat myself for my grades being so good, was like, it was right when digital receivers were starting to come out and everything was most things were analog, and I could only afford the highest level analog receiver. Couldn't quite get up to digital. And I regretted that purchase for so many. I was stuck with that receiver forever. So
yeah, on the one hand, there's like pride of ownership. On the other hand, there's the regretting not having saved up and waited to get what you really wanted. So
that's right.
We understand. Anthony, thank you for writing to Accessories for Less. And congratulations on that SR6010 purchase. That's a very nice receiver.
It certainly is. In the news this week, if you have an HD Home Run Prime Network tuner, the one that uses cable card, and then Xbox One, you can now watch copy-protected content. It only works for live viewing at the moment, but Silicon Dust, the maker of HD Home Run products, says their HD Home Run DVR will be updated at a later date to allow you to also record copy-protected cable content. This is the best hope yet for something to replace that feature of Windows Media Center. So you can look into that.
Yeah, so Windows Media Center basically dead now that everything's sort of moved on to Windows 10. So folks who are looking to replace Windows Media Center, one of the nice things it could do is you could plug a cable card in, and it was able to actually record copy-protected content. Now, you're wondering, why did HD Home Run have a cable card tuner that couldn't work with copy protected content? Because there are non-copy protected cable channels, what they call clear QAM, right? So it worked with that previously. Now they've paid all the licensing and DRM fees to make it work with copy protected content as well. So that's the big update there.
Sony has some interesting announcements. First of all, their 2017 TVs will support HDR, even their 1080p HD TVs, and not just. Excuse me. Oh man, I hadn't eaten all day, and right before this podcast, I slammed like a bunch of corn chips, and they were beating on me. So HDR will be supported with their 1080p HD TVs and not just their 4Ks. So second, the 4.5 system software update for a PS4 will finally let you store games on external hard drives. It'll also let you watch 3D Blu-rays using PlayStation VR.
Yeah, so I threw that in there because, of course, people have been wondering, since there are no TVs coming out in 2017 from anybody that will let you watch 3D, stereoscopic 3D from 3D Blu-rays, well, this is kind of I wouldn't call it a
You
solution.
got to put the goggles on your head. And
the goggles on your head. The 3D will be very good. There will be no crosstalk. The 3D effect in PlayStation VR is excellent. So the 3D will be very good. Unfortunately, since it's 1080p shared across two eyes and only a portion of that is the virtual screen in front of you, well, a good number of those pixels are just producing black because it's creating a rectangular screen out of sort of circular images. So I tried just to see what it was like watching like Netflix inside of the PlayStation VR headset, and that is a very screen door effect pixelated, not great resolution mess. So the 3D effect will be nice, the resolution not so great, but hey, if there's no other way to watch your 3D Blu-rays, there's one. So, yay.
Well, when you really sell it with the screen door effect, I will tell you that.
Yeah.
Nathan, this comes from Nathan. A pair of Toronto-based companies are teaming up to expand vinyl record production capability. Microform makes CDs and DVDs, and their clients have been begging. Come on, begging them to start pressing vinyl. So they've teamed up with Viral.
It's Viral. Yeah.
Viral. V-I-R-Y-L.
Replace the N in vinyl with an R. Viral. Yeah.
Viral. Who've developed modern vinyl production machines with touchscreens and sensors and app monitoring. They're hoping to replace the 40 to 50-year-old machines that are still being used today as the market for vinyl continues to grow from infinitesimal to slightly larger than infinitesimal. Yeah. People who are buying vinyl right now, 90% of them are buying it and not doing a damn thing with it. They are just buying it because
using the
it
download
goes well
that came with it.
their well-trimmed beards, and they put it on the wall and they feel cool. That's what's happening with vinyl
I do
kind of
like, though, that somebody has, like, because they were saying a lot of the machines that they're using to press vinyl right now are literally the 50-year-old machines that were used 50 years ago, and some of them are starting to break down.
Why can't we just
you have to
3D print this
manufacture
crap?
parts.
Why can't we just 3D print it?
Yeah,
I mean, let's be honest.
That's probably too slow and expensive right now. So it's kind of cool.
Oh, the more expensive you make it, the more people will like vinyl
That's true.
crap. So yes, we should do that. Nathan also forwarded us the news that the Turn-Off Altitude 32 processor will be getting an update to allow it to process 48 channels. So you can finally connect a complete 24.4.10 Atmos setup, because
that was
maximum. The only thing holding us a little back.
That's right. It really was.
You'll have to, so you'll still have enough channels left over to add RO3D height, center, surround height, and voice of God speakers at last. So
that's right. Because we were all like, I have 42 speakers and 4 subwoofers just hanging around. I can only use 11 of them right now. What kind of world are we living in?
I mean,
I don't know. Are they going to call it the Altitude 48?
It's like the third world home theater if you don't have a minimum of 4 subwoofers and 32 speakers.
They talked about this being a software update, though, not a hardware update. So I guess they're going to be sharing some of the outputs.
I was going to say, we're going to plug these things in at.
Yeah, well, it's got a pile of outputs, so.
Yeah. They're going to have to, like, repurpose some of those bad boys.
Yeah, well, I think what it has is, like, 16 XLRs, and then it had like, these, they almost look like printer port connectors that were, like, breakout cables.
Yeah.
And each one of those did 8, so they had, like, 32 of those total. So I guess you can do the 32 of those and the 16 XLR connections. There you go, 48.
There you go. Your custom installer who's going to come over and plug all this crap in for you is going to like look at this and go, "Oh my god, the wire management's going to be a nightmare." Yeah, man. Don't let me do it, because the rat's nest will be real. You'll have to cut the cables off.
When we say check your speaker wires on 48 speakers, that is a task.
Got some comments from our listeners. Bill disagreed with our opinions that THX certifying streaming services I'll try that again. Disagreed with our opinions about THX certifying streaming services. Although it isn't clear yet exactly what THX will actually do on that front, Bill feels there's a lot of variation in terms of streaming quality between the many surfaces, so he'd love to see either that standardized or at least measured and rated in some way. It's also clear to him that if streaming remains below the quality of physical discs. Clear to him that streaming remains below the quality. Well, yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If THX certified streaming somehow improves the quality of Bill's all for it. Yeah, but okay. How are they going to do that?
I think
how are they going to be able to tell you that your dial-up connection will get the THX stream versus my, pretty high stream versus Liz's FiOS, where she was like uploading uncompressed WAV files to me in that took me 30-something minutes to download, or 2 hours. I don't even remember what it is. It took her 2 minutes to upload them. Mm-hmm. Just half a gig of something, and she's like, "Yeah, it's done." Like, oh, I hate you so much. How? I mean, all they can do is from the Netflix end, right? I mean, that's all they can really do.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? What information does that give you? Exactly. Unless
like they were gonna set checkpoints for quality, and once you live up to that checkpoint, you get whatever THX standard name that they come up with, because they love to trademark things.
The only thing that would make at all compelling argument for me that's THX streaming certified blah blah crap is in any way useful for me is if a light or a some part of the display when you go for the information says THX on it, and that THX meant that I was getting 1080p and I was getting 5.1 this mm-hmm. At this bit rate. You know what I mean? That's the only time it would make sense to me. But that has nothing to do with Netflix itself. That has to do with your internet connection and how many people are online, and whether or not you're using.
Well, I mean, it does
Fios
matter
or
what they're
whatever.
sending out from their end in the first place. I mean, if you're limited by that rather than your own internet connection, that's one.
I don't care what they're sending out. If I don't care. I don't care. I don't care what they're sending
receiving,
out.
right?
I care what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I don't care and if I never see the THX stuff coming from, I don't know, Crackle, maybe. Isn't Crackle something? Isn't that
Yep,
the anime
it's
one?
a thing.
Yeah, Crackle one, and it's never showing up. I'm like, man, this thing's crap.
No.
Then I know.
Bill, my main concern is that they're not actually going to do anything to improve quality, that they're just going to get services to pay them money so they can slap a THX logo on what they're already doing without really requiring them to up their game in any significant way. That's my fear, because I feel like, man, this seems like it could be a cash grab on THX's part, and I would not be a fan of that.
I don't understand why anybody would give them any money anyways. I gotta be honest.
It seems a bit weird.
I don't understand. You gotta at the end customer's gotta find some value in it. And where's the value?
Yeah.
I don't see it. Maybe they can figure it out, but I don't see it at all. Speaking of interfaces, real quick as an aside, I've been complaining about Voodoo's interface on the Xbox One for a really long time. They totally redid it, and it is freaking awesome now.
Oh, good.
It is the best. It is. They finally like Amazon resisted this too for a long time. They finally instituted the press right to fast forward thing that Netflix has had for since I've ever used Netflix. I mean, for the longest time, Amazon Prime was the same way. You had to press fast forward and then play and then pause. I mean, I was like, ugh, where am I living? What year is this? Is this like 1992 that I have to press fast forward? No, I just press right. Press left, and they finally did that, and the HDX sign comes up whenever it tells you that you're getting the right stuff, and it's much better now. Okay. It is much better, and it has a recently watching. Like, I didn't have to go all the way through 15 menus to get to the Game of Thrones sub menu that had the episodes I was watching, and then I had to guess which one I had left off on, because it never had any sort of, this is how much you've watched of this one, basic stuff. So it's much better than it was before, so I gotta give them kudos for that. All right, back to some of our listener comments. Buddy shared a photo of his ESS Heil whatever speakers that we've been talking about. He's still a bit concerned that the Denon X3300W receiver we recommended might not be able to power them sufficiently, but he's no longer worried about pure Class A. Dude, you totally don't have to worry about these things. But anyways, he got to hear his friend's legacy audio speakers, and he still prefers the ESS Heels, so he's happy. That being said, he's changing his locks and getting a steel door in case Ted comes over to beat some legacy sense into him. And those Class A Krell amps do get hot, he says. So he's pleased with our advice. Now he's just deciding on a new subwoofer. They do get hot. I know, Class A, dude. It's 25% power, a sound to 75% heat.
So there is nothing fancy looking about these speakers. This is a 12-inch driver in a box with a tweeter on top of it, and it's like, it looks like they are two completely separate things. They're not. They're attached, but they look like they're two just separate components. Just one is, boom, they're on top of the other one. It's actually kind of a V-shaped folded ribbon tweeter, so it's got a lot of surface area. Tons of surface area there, so I wouldn't be surprised in the least if this thing can play crazy loud, because that's a big size driver to act as your midwoofer, and then a large tweeter, tons of surface area. So kind of cool.
Yes. Infinite Gary took our advice and temporarily set up his surround speakers and surround Dolby upfiring modules at the recommended locations and angles. I have not looked at the pics, but I don't care. It improved things. He's still never heard any pinpoint sounds coming from above, but the final effect sounds very enveloping and spacious. It is the bubble of sound, and that bubble can sound bigger than the room. What he found most interesting is that his dedicated theater sounds very different, but both presentations are pleasing in different ways. Overall, he now considers Atmos to be an enhancement, and he'd even recommend it, which is great. He agrees that actual overhead speakers would be better, but with careful and proper setup, up-firing modules do work, and they enhance the sound over 5.1. So there's I would say a pretty hearty endorsement from Gary, but it is a word of caution, saying that if you don't send them up in the way that they're recommended, don't expect them to work in the way that they should be.
Yeah, and ultimately he's decided to keep the system because he's like, hey, you know what? I get some things out of this system that I don't get out of my dedicated theater. I get things out of my dedicated theater I don't get out of this system. So, Gary is someone who's very into this and likes to play around with this stuff and likes to audition things. It makes perfect sense. He's got the means. He's got the room to do it. I'm all for it. I'm quite happy with that. If you're watching the YouTube video, I showed some comparison photos of where he had his surround and therefore Dolby surround up-firing speakers positioned in the past, and then where he temporarily put them down. Like one of them is literally sitting on top of a box on top of a bed. So that is not a permanent fixture, but he wanted to try what we said because we were like, give it a go and see. And he's like, okay, so if I'm going to do this permanently, I'm going to find a better position than on top of a box on top of a bed. But that's great. Worked out.
Yeah. All right, Ted says that he is going to what does it say here? Buddy's house. In response. Sorry. He's going to Buddy's house to go beat him up about the whole
Either that or he's looking into ESS Heil speakers now because he's like, if they're better than Legacy.
Your wife will never approve. Ted says in response to Infinite Gary's Odyssey measurement position question, even though you can start calculation after one position, Odyssey support says that it still requires, as in air quotes, multiple positions. And it seems like it does really require multiple positions to get the best result. Ted used to only measure one position, but now he measures in 3 locations. Center of the prime seat, 2 feet to the left and 2 feet to the right. He has noticed a significant improvement in the results compared to a single measurement. I do not think that is untrue. I think a minimum of moving around just a little bit, even if you're only going to be sitting in that one seat, since you can from just inches away really get slightly different measurements. What this will do is take out some of that variance. Really show Odyssey what's really happening in that seat, even if it's only 6 inches to every side or 2 feet to every side.
Yeah, like we say, if you only measure 1 point and then you go ahead and EQ that to the target curve, what's happening literally 6 inches to the left and 6 inches to the right could be different, so that you're actually doing damage in those positions when the only data point you gave it was a single one in the middle. So that's why it's better to give it at least a little bit of spatial resolution, so it goes, oh, you know what? I shouldn't touch that part of the frequency range, because if I do, I'm actually going to do more harm than good. I'll do good in this one spot, but I'll do harm in these other 2 spots. So that's why it makes sense.
Lastly, Vince has a suggestion for figuring out what screen size you like when using our go to the movie theater and sit in your preferred row method. Instead of counting your paces from your seat to the screen and then your paces from one side of the screen to the other, just count the ceiling tiles. Most theaters have drop ceilings and use a standard 2-foot by 4-foot tile, so counting the tiles is easy and accurate. That's a good idea. If that is the case,
I like that idea.
I like that a lot. I think that's a good idea. Not all do. I've been in theaters that don't. Right. But it's great that it's a good point. And
if you're going to the theater for this purpose, you can probably find one that does, because that is pretty common.
True. That is true. All right, let's get to the questions. Brandon's current let me try again.
Good start.
Getting off on the right foot. Tom wishes his water was closer to him. Yeah, that rhymed all on accident. All right, Brandon. Brandon's planning to upgrade his TV sometime this year, but he has an older receiver that only has HDMI 1.4 inputs, so this new TV will likely be 4K, simply because it's kind of hard to swing a dead cat and not hit 4K these days. He would prefer not to have to upgrade his receiver. Instead, he'd like to find a solution where he can run video directly to his TV and then audio via HDMI to his receiver without losing DTS, HDMI, and Dolby True HD audio. He knows that an HDMI splitter will only output to the lowest common resolution of connected displays. But is this an issue if only one of the connections is used for video? With a splitter, could he run one cable to a 4K TV with HDMI 2.0 and the other with audio only to the HDMI 1.4 receiver? So could he do that? Well, it depends on what your source is. Start with that. I mean,
he's thinking if each source has only one HDMI output, could he send that to a splitter, and then with the splitter's 2 outputs, send one just to the video, one just to the audio? No, unfortunately, that isn't going to work.
I can't think of any device that would do that, to be honest with you. If not, could you use something like the Seawall Echo split between the splitter and the receiver? Some of the devices circumvent his problem. He heard us mention the HD Fury before, but that is a lot more money. What benefits of any would he have over Seawall Echo?
It'll work. That would be the main benefit.
That would be the thing that, if you're looking for something that actually do the thing you want it to do, the HD Fury is kind of your go-to here.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, so there's a few things here to unpack. So first of all, how many sources
Yeah.
that will be outputting 4K video will also be putting out DTS HD Master Audio and Dolby True HD? Because to
One.
me, there's probably one, and that's your Ultra HD Blu-ray player.
Or, I mean, yeah.
Maybe a home theater PC at some point.
Or a gaming system. I mean, if he has a high-end gaming system.
Right, yeah. So
That's about the only thing I can think of.
if it's an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, you're okay, because there are plenty of Ultra HD Blu-ray players that include two separate HDMI outputs themselves.
Right.
One of them is meant to go directly to your 4K display. The other one is meant to go directly to your non-HDCP 2.2
Right.
AV receiver. That's exactly what it's there for. But if you do have other sources at some point, and maybe it's an Xbox One S, maybe that's
Right.
going to be your Ultra HD Blu-ray player. It only has one HDMI output, so that would make sense. Unfortunately, a splitter will not work. It's going to see that one of the connections is not HDCP 2.2, and it's going to either, the best case scenario is it says, all right, I'm just going to keep everything at 1080p. The worst case scenario, it says, your display is not HDCP 2.2, and that's all it tells you. It just gives you a black screen. That's the worst case scenario.
Not the display, the receiver.
Yeah.
The receiver's not HDMI.
But that'll be the message that comes up.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It'll say that. Now, that Sewell Echo, it claims to be a 4K upscaler, downscaler, but unfortunately, the inputs that it can accept only go up to a maximum of 4K at 30 hertz with no HDCP 2.2 protection. It itself cannot even accept a 4K 60 signal with HDCP 2.2 copy protection. Its real purpose is to, if you have, say, a 4K display and a 1080p display, and for some reason that 4K display has horrible upscaling, this will do the upscaling for you while leaving the 1080p output alone. Or if you're feeding in a 1080p and you have a second display that accepts 720p only, it'll downscale the one output to 720p. But it cannot even accept the HDCP 2.2 signal to begin with. So that's not a solution, unfortunately. The solution is the HD Fury if you need to do this. And that is expensive. That's $250. Now, that's probably still less expensive than buying a new AV receiver.
Right. Yeah.
But honestly, that's the only two solutions.
So you need to ask yourself, what's your sources going to be? If you're only going to have an Ultra HD Blu-ray player and you can live without having the newest gaming system or whatever it is that is out there,
or you have the newest gaming system, but you live with less than lossless audio. Because if you're gaming, maybe Dolby Digital 5.1 is okay.
Yeah, that's true. So, yeah. I mean, you can just get yourself an Ultra HD Blu-ray player like the Oppo or one of the other ones that have dual outputs, and you'd be okay. For now. And then if you want to start upgrading stuff later, then between that later and the time that you actually do it would be to get a receiver. And those receivers are only going to get cheaper as time goes away. He also asks, will HDMI 2.0 devices be firmware upgradable to HDMI 2.1? Do we even know what 2.1 is I think we talked about it, didn't we? Did we talk about that?
Yeah. Well, the hardware side of it, which is going all the way up to 48 gigabits per second, no. Yeah. There's no way to firmware upgrade something that maxes out at 18 gigabits per second to magically suddenly be able to pass 48 gigabits per second. That's not happening. Some of the features that are part of the HDMI 2.1 spec, some of the individual features that don't require 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth, potentially could be firmware upgradable. Such things would include dynamic metadata for HDR10.
Yeah.
That is one feature that is part of the HDMI 2.1 spec, but it doesn't require a whole lot more bandwidth. So it's technically possible that particular feature might be a firmware upgrade for some existing HDMI 2.0A equipment.
I would not hold my breath on
that. We don't know exactly. I'm just saying from a technical point of view, anything that fits within the old bandwidth could theoretically be part of a firmware, because it's a feature, not a...
They could also theoretically, send a team of Swedish masseuses to your house and to give you a massage to make you feel better about the fact that they are totally not going to do any of that stuff.
Yeah, HDMI always says they don't really want consumers talking about spec numbers, because having an HDMI 2.1 port doesn't mean it supports anything. You know,
Right.
a manufacturer could use that port and then
Right.
say, you know what, the only thing you can pass through here is 480p and 2-channel stereo. That's it. That's all we support in this device, even though we have an HDMI 2.1
Yes.
connection.
Yes.
Right. So it's up to them to say what features it supports. The spec just says what it's capable of supporting.
doing. I'm still a little unclear as why we need so much bandwidth, to be honest with you.
Well, it's forward looking because they're looking at 8K resolution.
I know. So. I still am dubious about whether or not we need a 4K resolution. So 8K all of this just seems like bigger numbers. For
overkill.
Well, I mean, it's like receivers. It's like I have 120 watts. Well, I have 125. You're like, yeah, all of you, none of you put out more than 2 watts at any given time. But whatever. All right, John. John over at Facebook says, after Tom told John's dog to man up, he tried his best, ... Now, I have not seen this picture. I am clicking on it now for the first time.
This was his most manly face that the dog could produce. That is as butch as that dog will get.
This is a very unbutch dog. I'm not going to lie to you. As butch dogs go, not very butch. This is a dog that fits in the purse. And not a real big purse either, like a medium-sized purse. This dog, you could sneak this dog into a theater and still bring some popcorn for the kids. That's all I'm saying.
That's a cute dog.
That is a very cute dog, and I am a dog person. I would like to pet that dog. That sounded weird when I said it, but really, it's innocuous. That is a cute dog with big ears. I am 100%
all
for this
manned
dog.
up.
He is a manly dog. That dog. There has been at least 1 or 2 rats in this world that have looked at that dog and gone, okay, fine, I'll run away. That's all right. Okay, sorry, John. Thank you. Your dog is very cute. You tell him I said that, but at the same time, seriously, dude, man up. All right, measuring from the front baffle. How far from the front wall? From the front baffle. How far from
that was how we phrased it. So.
Okay, from the front wall should the main left and right speakers be placed? He knows the answer is room and or speaker dependent, but what are our general thoughts on the subject and how far from the wall are our mains? All right, first of all, speakers have all kind of different depths, so I don't know how you could say from the front baffle. I'm imagining what you mean is from the back of the speaker.
He said from the front baffle. And yeah, we'll just say to John, normally we consider the distance from the back of the speaker to
or the side, whatever is the closest thing to the thing. That's what I measure the empty air. So a good general rule of thumb for me is about 18 inches. Yep. 2 feet is better.
2 feet.
2.5 feet, a little bit better than that.
And one thing that can help
I'm going about 2 feet from my speakers, because he asked, is about 2 feet from the front wall. The back of the speaker is 2 feet from the front wall.
Okay.
And the side of the speaker on my right speaker, it's on my left side now, is I'm going about 18 to 20 inches from the side wall, and the other one is much further than that because there's an opening, a little bit of opening there. So it is the same distance from where the wall would be if there was a wall there, but there was a closet there. I took the doors off, and now it fires into that closet, which there is an absorptive panel in there to catch that first reflection.
Yeah, one thing that's commonly recommended is whatever the distance is from the back of your speaker to the front wall, don't have that be the exact same distance as the side of the speaker to the nearest side wall. So don't have it 2 feet from the front wall and 2 feet from the side wall, because if you do create any standing wave pattern with those early reflections, that'll just compound itself by both of those being equal. So if you're 2 feet away from the front wall, make it 3 feet away from the side wall or something like that. Mine are about 15 inches, the backs of them, from the front wall, and that's not as much as I might like. I agree with Tom. About 2 feet is kind of what you're aiming for if you can. But to counteract that, I put some absorptive panels behind my front speakers on the front wall so that they're catching that early reflection on the back there, knocking that down a little bit. So, we adjust as necessary, because not all of us have large rooms and have infinite possibilities for where we can place our speakers. But for regular tower and bookshelf speakers, try to get about 2 feet behind them if you can. And yeah, that's our thoughts.
There you go. But when it comes down to, honestly, dude, what can you do?
Right.
What your space dictates what it is, where your TV is, how where your furniture is and stuff. You do what you can do. There's general guidelines, but in the end, I'm like, well, it looks best placed right here. I would like it to be placed someplace else, but that's where it is. BD, I guess is his name on Twitter, or her name, not going to judge, has an open concept great room. I guess is a he, using some EMP Tech E3B satellite speakers. I'm now going to assume that every person who has a gender neutral name and calls themselves we're saying he, that they're all she's.
Gotcha.
I think I want to have a 50% mix of girls and women. Women.
I looked at some of our YouTube analytics. I think it said 99% male, 1% female of all viewers.
We know who that female
specify.
is, right? There were the two. There's Liz, who occasionally might accidentally click on something, and what's her name?
Abby.
I was going to say Angie.
Asked a question this week. So
did she really?
Yeah, that's right. Hopefully we make it that far while you're still here. I might carry on alone. That's a tease for later.
No, I don't know about that. All right. Anyway, it says, he is using some EMP Tech E3B satellite speakers, which are better than his TV's built-in speakers, but they still fall apart when there's some really loud sound. So for around $500 on these speakers, we think he'd do a much better job and fix his problem in his large open living space. I kind of wonder what fall apart means, because if that's the only thing he's using, I'm wondering if it's the bass or the treble.
Well, he asks about that himself. Yeah, it is a bit tough to tell, because I mean, if you're running them full range,
they're obviously going to have issues. Now,
yeah.
Okay, Super Bowl. All right, Super Bowl. We have a neighbor who throws a 3-day Super Bowl party. It was still going on yesterday, so Rob, who's spilling the podcast, was okay because there were still people out there partying last night, which was Monday. So, I was invited to go over there. I was planning on going over there to watch the Super Bowl with them, because they always have an oyster bar, and I am down with some oysters. Mm-hmm. So I instead got invited to my brother-in-law's place, where they have a TV, which the first thing I said when I walked in their house was, because they just redid their whole kitchen and living room, and that's all, open and beautiful and redone. I walked in and went, now your TV looks really small. My sister-in-law went, what? I'm like, it looks so small. How do you even see that from way over there? She's like, you think it's small? I'm like, I don't think it's small. I know it's small. So now they're talking about getting a big TV. So nice. They got this nice big open concept room, this small TV that we're all huddled around like it's a dying campfire, and everybody's saying, "Can you turn it up? Can you turn it up? I can't hear the TV. Can you turn it up?" No one could hear the TV. No one could hear it. It was full blast, full bore, just going to town, right? And my brother-in-law is like, "Yeah, it's as loud as it gets." I'm like, "Oh, wow. If only you knew somebody. If only you knew somebody who had speakers just lying around his house waiting for things to do with them. If only you knew a person like that." He goes, "Yeah, I'm probably going to get a sound bar." I'm like...
A lot of sound bars, like, they get louder than the TV's built-in speakers, but not really that much.
Believe me, there is no talking to these people. That's not going to happen. No matter what I say to them, it's not going to happen. So anyways, that being said, you need something that can handle put out a lot of sound with very little power. So you've got EMP Tech E3B satellite speakers. So I'm guessing he wants something small. So unfortunately, small really, really super limits you to what you can and can't do. I kind of want to push you towards something larger. If we can get you into something a little bit larger that might still look good. Mm-hmm. And if you've got a good, nice, big open concept room, these Focal speakers, the birds and the super birds and stuff like that, I don't know how loud they can get, but they do have bigger versions of them, which are still quite narrow. They're not so deep, so they will sit. The super birds will sit very kind of flush on your wall, and I think they look pretty cool. There is no substitution for physics, and physics tells us you want big sound, you need the big box. There's just really no getting away from it. There's some things that you can do with a smaller box. There's some tricks that you can use to make it sound really good. But in the end, if you're going to move a lot of air, you just need to physically be able to move it. So I am going to suggest that you look into something that's has the kind of look that you can get away with, that is not so, but still gives you a big enough sound. Now, when we get to the next part of his question, we'll talk on maybe what some of the distortion that he's hearing, because he's saying they're falling apart. But that's the first thing that came in my mind. Of course, the first thing that came in my mind was like the Super Zeros or something. But I'm like, you know what? He's gonna run into the same problem.
Yeah, same issue.
Is they're just small. There's only so much you can do with small. Not if you listen loud.
Describing his room a little bit on Twitter, it was like, about 15 feet away, big open room, and I'm like, the speakers themselves might be struggling. This might not just be
Yeah.
a bass thing. I mean, the E3B satellites, we like them, but they're meant for a small room. RBH will tell you they're meant for a small room. They're not meant for that kind of distance. They really aren't. So I had a similar thought. I'm like, I want more efficient speakers, something that can play quite loud with not necessarily a lot of watts, but actually has the capability to still absorb a lot of watts if you need to get really, really loud.
Yeah.
And I came to the HSU HB1 Mark II speakers. They're horn-loaded speakers. They're nice and efficient, about 93 decibels with 1 watt going into them, but they can absorb 250 watts all day long. And they even have like a nice rose nut finish if you want that. Those ones are still $400 a pair shipped, even in the rose nut finish, and they're less than that in the standard black.
But if you're going to go bigger, and he likes EMP tech already, he could go bigger EMP tech like the bookshelf speakers.
Yeah.
And
I was a little, I mentioned those to him on Twitter. I was a little hesitant on those because they're not very efficient. They can absorb a ton of power and play loud, but they're not very efficient. So
that's true. That's true.
The combination.
Do we know what he's using for a source?
No, I didn't know, but I'm assuming, like, I was looking at what he was saying. He's like, I just wanted something better than TV speakers. I went with the E3Bs. I'm like, I'm kind of guessing he doesn't have a massive wattage AV receiver powering this thing. Maybe he does. I don't know.
I mean,
that's an
it doesn't
assumption
have
on
to
my
be
part,
massive wattage for the EMP techs. I mean, yes, they're not as efficient as any horn loaded. By the way, any horn loaded speaker almost certainly would be a good choice of Klipsch. Those sorts of things that with really high efficiency would be good. He's recommending the HSUs because they're less expensive than the Klipsch,
and they sound better.
And he thinks they sound better. I have not heard them in the model Mark ones or whatever they saw. I thought were hot garbage. So I know the new ones are better. I still haven't heard them, so we're going to go with Rob on that one. I'm perfectly comfortable with going with that. That being said, if you can go bigger, this is really what you need to do. You just have to go bigger in order to your room's too big and you're sitting too far away. So it very well if you don't want to change your receiver, or your receiver is very low wattage. I mean, what's really low wattage these days? I mean, everything's like 95 or above.
That's true.
If it's very entry level and you're worried about that, then you go with something horn loaded like the HSUs that he's talking about. If you have a little bit more power, you can maybe go with those Focal Superbirds, and those will definitely do it. And the same if you want to stick with EMP tech and you have a receiver that's not exactly entry level, those EMP tech speakers, the bookshelf ones, would be just
the Impression series we're talking about.
Yes. So with adding a subwoofer, he asks, fix his issue. Just adding a subwoofer. To add a wrinkle, he has a local dealer offering an older SVS PB2 ISD. This is one of their massive dual 12-inch driver models in a ported box the size of a coffee table.
That's right.
And he's offering this for $600, which is, I think they were quite expensive when they were a lot more than that when they were initially offered.
Oh, yeah.
So would that plus his E3B speakers be enough? My guess is no. To be honest with you, honestly, you are hearing distortion because your speakers you're running them full range.
Maybe
you are
that wasn't clear, but very possibly, yeah.
I think if you're even crossing them over at 80 hertz, these speakers are going ow. So I mean, that is a problem.
Yeah.
So, but I think if you took that problem away, which is by crossing them over, I think that the subwoofer would be able to play, especially this one. It would be able to play loud enough, maybe not to pressurize the room, but certainly loud enough to get to a decent volume at your seat.
That thing was huge. That had a lot of output.
But I'm not even sure your speakers would be able to keep up enough. But that's in that they would distort before they got to a volume that you were comfortable with at your seat, even with a high crossover.
Yeah,
they're still going to distort. That's my guess. Which means that you're still going to... Is it just adding the sub going to be enough? My guess, my opinion is no. I don't know why I have to say so many times.
Definitely leaning the same direction. I'm not going to say it's impossible, because if you did this, you might say, you know what, that was enough. Taking all of the bass pressure off of the E3Bs was enough to get me to a point where I felt like it sounded okay. But it's so much either on the borderline, and I'm leaning to the side of the border that says, I think you genuinely need speakers that can play louder than what you have right now.
Yeah.
So, that would be more important. I would get the speakers in this case.
Yeah, so do the older SVS subwoofers have the same kind of protection against bottoming out and distorting as the newer models? Would the PB2 ISD be enough to handle his open space? Well, okay, the second, I believe the PB2 ISD would be able to handle your open space without knowing
Yeah.
exactly the cubic feet and everything else. I mean, he says it's big. Is it big or is it just, big? Uh, I certainly think that this thing will be able to put a lot of bass into your space.
Yes.
Will it be absolutely able to pressurize, to reference volume? Maybe. it's not beyond the realm of possibility, but without knowing exactly what your room looks like.
It's
but
certainly not a sub where I would go, oh, this definitely isn't enough, though.
Right.
This is like, it's either going to be enough or very close to enough.
If somebody said I had one of these subwoofers and they told me nothing else, I'm like, that's probably more than enough with what you need. Regardless of, unless they're like, yes, I live in a auditorium. Oh, well, then maybe you need to. So I don't know that if do they have the protection, Rob? You're gonna have to.
Well, it's not the same protection that they have now. The new ones use digital signal processing. The old ones didn't. They had bash amplifiers,
right.
Which are very solid. And as long as you put even a half decent rumble filter on the bottom and some kind of low pass filter on the top, you would really have to abuse it to cause a problem.
Which means your other speakers are already going to be melted down by that point.
Yeah. So is it the same protection? No, but it is still well protected to the point that if you start to hear noise, you will have time to turn it down and prevent serious damage. I wouldn't worry about it, in other words.
Yeah. So since this is a used subwoofer, anything to look out for when examining it to tell if it's in good working order? Honestly, with subwoofers and speakers in general, but with subwoofers, they don't really do that much stuff. They kind of only do the one thing that they do. So you test it by seeing if it does the thing it does without doing anything it's not supposed to do. So bringing your phone with a sweep on it, let's be generous here, 100. How about 200 hertz down to 10 hertz sweep on there. With a little plug that plugs into your headphone and it goes into a RCA cable. Plug that in. Plus, play the sweep. Turn the volume up really stupid loud. I mean, not like all the way up, but loud. And then just play the sweep a couple of times. If you don't hear any buzzing, if you don't hear any clanging,
right?
If you don't see any smoke, you're probably frankly, you can make even this sub sound bad.
Sure,
it is possible. Abuse it enough. If you abuse it, you can turn it all the way up, and you might hear some port noise. You might hear, what's wrong with the sub? What's wrong with the sub is you're a jerk. Is what's wrong with the sub. Let's be honest. This is your fault. You're bringing the problems here. But you turn it up, half, 2/3, something like that, so that you're within the realm of what should be normal operating volume for a large room like you're in, and it sounds just, and you don't hear any. Because believe me, dude. You can examine the rubber surround and stuff like that. You can do all of that stuff, cosmetic things, that sort of thing. You could do all that, plug into all the inputs, change any sort of high pass, low pass things, see if that causes any issues. You could do all that, but really, if it just goes and sounds normal, and you do it 4 or 5 or 6 times, I'd be like, all right, we're good, and that would be the end of that.
Yeah, but the only other tip I'd add to that is I would leave it plugged in and turned on, either sitting idle or playing the bass sweep, doesn't really matter, but leave it plugged in and turned on for at least 15 minutes, because sometimes people do this really quickly, and then get yourself right up close to that amplifier plate on the back. First of all, see if there's excessive heat coming off the thing, because those bash amps, they get warm, but they shouldn't get hot.
Okay.
That's a bad sign if it's getting really hot. And if you press your ear right against the cabinet of the subwoofer, you'll probably hear a faint hum, a faint buzz, just that electrical power supply faint hum that you get from almost anything. But from like a foot away, it should be dead silent. If you can hear a constant hum or buzz coming from that amplifier from a foot away or more, then that indicates something ain't quite right in that power supply anymore, because those bash amps were very quiet. If you pressed your ear against it, you could hear that faint buzz. But I've come across ones where it's like, I'm 2 feet away, I can hear it buzzing. That ain't right. It's not supposed to do that. So you can check that.
Good idea. Justin, not Bieber, on Facebook. Justin says he is having an issue with his Vizio E55C1. It shuts off at random intervals. He thought it might be a CEC, which is HDMI, CEC, which is the HDMI control thing.
Yeah.
Handshake issue, but he turned off CEC and it still does it. He has hooked it up to his Marantz SR6010 with HDPC running Kodi on Windows 10 as the source. He turned off all power saving functions and screensavers. He also tried doing a full factory reset of the TV, and at Rob's request, he tried using it without any network connection for a while. No luck.
Yeah.
He called Vizio and they suggested it's a power supply issue. Do we agree? Do we have any other ideas he could try? Sadly, his warranty expired 9 days ago.
Yeah.
Dang, dude, that super sucks. Although Vizio said they'd look into possibly giving him an exemption since it's so close. Well, if Vizio thinks it's a power supply issue, I think it's a power supply. It does kind of sound like a power supply issue. I can't really think of anything else, anything short of some kind of weird short that's happening in there that would make this happen. So yeah,
over on Facebook, I said my first suspicion was a failing power supply, because that's what TVs do when their power supply starts to go on them. But because I wasn't sure, there are sometimes other things. I had an AV receiver one time where it kept trying to connect to the to my network, to the Wi-Fi network, and at one point I had reset my router and my Wi-Fi password, and it kept trying to connect to the network over and over and over, and when it failed, it eventually shut itself off. I'm like, well, that's really stupid design, because you either had to like tell it to not ever connect to a network, or it had to be able to connect, or else it would eventually shut itself off. So I'm like, could be something like that. So that's why I had him, turn off the network connection and test that for a while, because I'm like, all right, but that's about as far. That's all the suspects I could have. And after he talked to Vizio, they're like, yeah, it's probably the power supply, which was my first thought, Tom's first thought. Yeah, I think that's what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll extend that warranty for you.
Yeah.
Nick is putting a subwoofer behind acoustically transparent. Asks,
yes.
Is putting a subwoofer behind acoustically transparent screen a problem? If the space is really tight and the subwoofer driver is flush up against the screen, will it make the screen move or vibrate in a way that will affect the picture? Or is this a non-issue? That is actually a really good question. I want to say that, because I had never really considered it. Now, first of all, can you turn the subwoofer so the driver is not right up against the screen? Can you
or even more importantly, the ports? Because sometimes there's more air movement in a more
the ports,
kind of fashion.
Exactly. Like if you look at the diameter of the port and the diameter of the driver, there's actually more air going to be coming through the port because it's just smaller diameter.
Same amount of air, but through a smaller hole, so higher velocity.
Right. So regardless, I would not face the driver or the port towards the screen. I just wouldn't do that. Remember,
at
your
moderate
driver
levels, it should be fine, because, like we say, if something's acoustically transparent, you can kind of hold it up to your mouth, blow through it, and really not feel very much resistance.
Yeah, but not very much is not zero.
But it's not zero. That's right, it's not zero. And certainly, like when I had a curtain behind my front subwoofer at one point, whoa, man, was that curtain moving sometimes? Because subwoofer can move a lot of air. So if you're cranking it up, I could see a vibration possibly happening. And since we're talking about low frequencies, it's not like, what Sony's doing by vibrating the panel of their OLED with little actuators. That's only the high frequencies that they're doing that on. They have a separate driver handling the lower mid-range and bass. So I'd be a little cautious of it. I agree. Turn it sideways so that it's not directly forcing the air right at the screen.
I think most people don't have an issue with this, because what they do is they have a false wall, basically,
under the screen,
and then that part of that is under the screen where the subwoofer is, and that's also acoustically transparent fabric. But that fabric is attached to some sort of board or something. That's also, the screen is also attached to, so that air that might be coming through there is going to be shaking this little black speaker grill fabric for all intents and purposes, and you're never going to see it. So if your screen was floor to ceiling, which it could theoretically be, and some of our listeners do have such setups, and your subwoofer was behind that screen, it could. You ask, is it a non-issue? I don't think it's a non-issue. I think this could very well be an issue.
Yeah, I'd have some concern.
I would have some concerns.
I wouldn't dismiss it.
I don't know what the solution to that concern is, to be honest with you, other than don't do this thing. So he asks, is using a subwoofer as a speaker stand for a bookshelf speaker a good idea? Any special considerations? Yeah, the special consideration is your bookshelf is not located in two of your opposing corners or opposing middle of the wall, which is where we want your subwoofers to be. So can you use a subwoofer for a stand? You absolutely can.
I mean, it's totally fine to have two up front beneath your front speakers and another two at the back of the room, mirror image to them at the back. That would be great. That's a great placement of 4 subwoofers.
But you're not going to do that. What you're talking about is just using 2 subwoofers as speaker stands. And people do this, and then they call them full range speakers now because they can. But we don't want your subwoofers to be placed in those. If you only have 2,
if you only have
placed in those 2 locations, because those are not the good locations for subwoofers. Those will not give you the most even distribution of bass. So, is using a speaker stand, a subwoofer as a speaker stand on a bookshelf a good idea? Well, it is a perfectly fine idea as long as you do not turn the subwoofer on. Or
if you have a matching partner at the back of the room.
That's right. You can only do it if you have 4 subs. That is the AVRant approved way of doing this.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, if you did this, you could do the trial and error of adjusting the phase on one of those subs until you get a reasonable response. Well, I mean, if that's where you have to place your 2 subs, it doesn't have to be the end of the world. It wouldn't be our first choice for sure, but it can be done, the trial and error method of adjusting the phase on one of those subs until you get as uniform and even response as you're able to with 2 subs both at the front of the room. As far as physically, I would just make sure that I have something damp. I would damp underneath the sub to start, and then I would damp in between the sub and the speaker. That can be foam, that can be Tom's favorite thing ever, mouse pads, just something squishy. Something squishy. If you want to use blue tack, that's also fine. That will damp and secure the speaker at the same time. So just something squishy in there so that the vibrations from the sub aren't going right up into the cabinet of the speaker.
Look, every time you say that, like the stock on mouse pads go up. We should sell the AVRant. You know what? If we ever sell a product, it's going to be a mouse pad.
Absolutely.
And it's not for using.
You can totally get printed mouse pads.
It is not for using underneath your mouse. It is only for putting underneath speakers. That's all they're for. Just for putting underneath speakers.
That's right.
Stupidest thing ever. All right. Nick's theater is in the corner of his basement. His master bedroom is directly above it. If there isn't a lot of bass, you can listen at a pretty loud volume and not really hear it in the bedroom above. But if there is bass, that seems to easily transfer into the bedroom. Would a room within a room solve his problem? Would it be worth the considerable time and effort and expense, actually? It would absolutely solve your problem. It is way overkill, but it is. It's like
there's
a
step we're gonna tell you to take first and try that is way cheaper and not very time.
It's like saying I have ants in my kitchen. Would burning down the house fix my problem? It would absolutely fix your problem. You would no longer have a kitchen, nor would you have ants. At the same time, maybe you should try a couple other things first. The first thing you want to do is decouple your subwoofer from your floor.
Yes.
And that's what Rob was talking about. You want to stack up underneath each one of the feet about 15 of the new AVRant mouse pads to secure.
Yeah.
We have to sell them in bulk. You have to understand, we have to sell them in bulk.
The thickest mouse pads anyone has ever sold. Like, why do you want these so thick? That makes no sense. It's going to hurt people's wrists.
You can sell them in pairs. They come in pairs.
Why do you want a mouse pad that has good traction on it? We've never heard of such a thing. People want them to be slippery.
So in pairs, and we sell them in 4 stacks of 20. Okay, that's for your subwoofers.
Yep.
Okay, anyways. Yes, you're going to want to get something underneath your subwoofer to decouple it from the floor. And at this time, to try it out, if you just get yourself a nice, big, thick, plush blanket and fold it over a couple times and put this underneath it, put that underneath your subwoofer. And yeah, it might be lopsided and wobbling around up there, but who cares? This is just a trial. Turn on something loud, close the door, go up to your bedroom, see how it sounds.
That's right.
If it makes a big difference,
You saved a lot of money and time.
You just didn't have to build a room within a room. Now, will
Yeah.
it make a huge difference? I don't know. It could. It depends on how the sound is transferring through your home. Chances are it's structural. You're shaking the floor or the walls, which are shaking the floor, which is shaking the walls, which is shaking the floor of your bedroom, which is shaking the stuff in your bedroom, which is shaking your ears.
Yeah, and the clue here is that he says the rest of the sound he can turn up pretty darn loud and not hear it. That indicates that your problem is not flanking noise, meaning it's
Right.
not some direct air movement like it's getting into your air ducts or it's getting into the electrical outlet of a wall, going up the bay of the wall into, coming out the electrical outlet of the bedroom upstairs. And that's a good thing. That's a really good thing because this indicates that it is that structural vibration, which means that damping your subwoofer has a high likelihood of helping you out a lot. If it were a different case where you're like, yeah, I can pretty clearly hear the speakers and the bass is even worse, then I would go, uh-oh, you've probably got air movement and structural, and now that really means you need to reconstruct the room in some way. Yeah. So definitely give the damping the subwoofer a try first, because that's pretty cheap and easy and doesn't take a lot of time.
So if that works, then you can get something like
That's
the SVS little pads there.
Yeah, the sound path isolation feet.
Isolation feet thingy, or the
or Alex Grandma riser. Or something else squishy to put under there. You can make a platform of your own with some foam and some plywood.
John's got a dog. You would need 4 of those because they're little. Not known for sitting still, nor doing push-ups, because that's manly, and those dogs are not that. So he asks, and this is kind of immaterial at this point, but we'll answer it anyways. If constructing a room within the room, are double studs necessary on exterior walls? And I have no idea. So, Rob.
Well, shouldn't be. What you're really trying to do is the sound waves are going to hit some surface first, and that's probably going to be the dry wall of your walls. Right. It's going to be whatever flooring is on your floor. You want that surface to have a separation between it and the thing that is holding the floor above. So if you're talking a basement foundation wall, an exterior basement foundation wall that is holding the joists that go across your ceiling and that's your floor above, and then you're doing the normal thing of putting up some 2x4s so that you can hang some drywall, because you're probably not going to hang the drywall directly onto the concrete foundation. If that's what you have, that already is a double wall, right? You have the concrete foundation as your one wall, the 2x4 studs that are just there to hold the drywall, they're already the second wall. So you don't need to put in a second set of studs that are separate from the first set of studs and then put drywall on the second set of studs. You haven't separated it from the foundation wall any more than that original exterior wall was already separated. But if you're talking about the party wall that's on the inside, then you want the drywall on one side to be physically separated from the drywall on the other side, right? So that's what you're after. You're after a separation of that first surface from whatever is on the other side that you don't want the sound to get to.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
So if the plan is to include Atmos with in-ceiling speakers, does it even make sense to construct a room within a room? Well, we don't know yet, but let's go. Do the big holes in the ceiling negate everything else? Well, remember, when you do your Atmos speakers, you're going to have them in with backer boxes. So that's going to provide some sound isolation from the other area. But at the same time, you're also going to put some sort of dampening around there, insulation, however. I mean, there's the company that we are always talking about that has oodles of articles about how to do all of this stuff. What's the name of it, Rob?
Soundproofingcompany.com.
There you go. You got to go there, and they will explain to you all the ways that you can do. Because believe me, you're not the first person who's had a room within the room or thought about it, and you're certainly not going to be the last. And they have considered, those rooms, many of those rooms do have in-wall and in-ceiling speakers. So this is all part of it. As long as, you take the proper precautions, it's still going to be fine. But we really think it's probably not going to be what you need to do at this point.
Right. So, yeah, if you're going to create a large hole in the first surface, you just need to make sure that you close that hole behind whatever is you're putting in that hole. So if you're putting in a can light, there needs to be a box behind that can light so that the air can't just move freely through the hole and up into the cavity of your ceiling. If it's an in-ceiling speaker, you put a box behind the in-ceiling speakers. So you can do this. It's just you're making a hole in that first surface and then you're covering the hole. That's the solution to doing it.
Yeah, I got to do it. I'm sorry. deleting stuff. So what about, wow, dude, seriously, what about using a drop ceiling? How does that fit into the room within the room plan? You can. I mean, at this point, you're basically building a drop ceiling somewhat by having another room within your room.
Mm-hmm.
You could, within that room, have a drop ceiling, and then you could put your in-ceiling speakers there, and then you don't have to worry about soundproofing the other stuff that we were talking about. You don't have to worry about sealing up behind that in-ceiling speaker. You put the in-ceiling speaker inside the drop ceiling. At this point, though, your room is about 6.5 feet tall. So well, I'm not sure this is the best thing that you could do, but you could put a drop ceiling in a room within a room. There's certainly no reason why you couldn't. I just don't think you probably need to.
And you could also consider the drop ceiling itself to be part of a room within a room system. Because what you would normally have, right? Normally you'd have the drywall connected directly to the joists of the ceiling above you, right? That would be the normal situation. And what we're saying is if you're creating a room within a room, you're creating something else that's not the joists to hold whatever the surface of your ceiling is, and then attaching the surface of your ceiling to that. Well, a drop tile ceiling is already that. You've already extended down the the metal supports that hold the tiles, and then the tiles are the surface of your ceiling, and they are not in direct contact with the joists above. That's already there. So you've done the decoupling. That's one thing. Now, Soundproofing Company, they talk about their 4 methods of soundproofing. Decoupling is one, damping is another. So the damping is already kind of taken care of. Those ceiling tiles are already kind of squishy a little bit themselves, so they're already kind of free to float within that frame, that metal grid already, so the damping's already there. And you can still put insulation above it, which is another of the 4 steps. So really the only one you're missing is high mass, because the ceiling tiles don't have a ton of mass to them, unlike 2 layers of drywall would. Certainly they're not as massive as that. So you're missing 1 out of the 4, but you got the other 3. It can actually do a pretty good job if you get acoustic ceiling tiles that are designed to block some sound, and you still insulate above. It can do a pretty good job all by itself. So it's not as good as 2 layers of drywall with green glue in between them, but it's still better than 1 layer of drywall connected directly to your joist. It's actually much better than that.
All right. Regarding dedicated pre-pros versus receivers, we almost always suggest buying a receiver with pre-outs because even if there's an equivalent dedicated pre-pro model, that pre-pro is often just as expensive or more expensive than the receiver model. But what if the plan is to use nothing but external amplification no matter what? Could the power savings offset the upfront cost? I feel like I read this question and I still don't understand it, but we'll go on. Nick figures that there'd be 2 ways to save power. First, there'd be no receiver amp sitting idle, so the pre-pro should use less power than the receiver. And second, you could buy an efficient Class D or Class H amps as just external amps, which would use less power than the Class AB amps found in most receivers. So what do we think? Would the total of those power savings justify buying a dedicated pre-pro instead of a receiver? I'm going with no. Just in general.
On the other hand, I'm going with if you're going to use all external amplification no matter what, go for it.
I mean, okay, this is to me, this is all a very convoluted, way of saying I really want to buy a pre-pro.
I really want to buy a pre-pro.
In which case I say
that was my thinking too. Yeah.
In which case I say buy a pre-pro, dude. You don't need my. I almost said a bad word. You don't need my permission. You can buy whatever you want. I am not the boss of you. As far as I can tell, and I'm being dead honest here, I ain't the boss of nobody. Like, even the people I'm supposed to be the boss of, like my children, they don't listen to anything I say. Nothing at all. My wife full on just goes, and that's it. Like, that sound, that means everything you just said, that's all crap, and you can just shut up. That's what it means. Just go sit in the corner, Tom. Listen to your prime elevation speakers, dummy. Right? That's what it means. So, if you want to buy a pre-pro, buy a pre-pro. You don't have to justify it with any of this stuff. You could buy a pre-pro and get Class A amps. I don't care. You can sit there and warm up the whole house. You could single-handedly cause a big hole in the ozone layer above your house using Class A amps that put out nothing but carbon monoxide, methane, and I don't know what else is really bad. Sulfur hexafluoride. How about that? Sulfur hexafluoride puts out that. It's a terrible greenhouse gas, by the way. Anyways, you could do all that. And I'd be like, dude, it's your house. I don't care what you do.
Well,
But
thankfully these days, like if you're looking at Marantz, Yamaha, Emotiva as well, their pre-pros are not drastically more expensive than the flagship AV receiver. They're either the same price, or in some cases they're actually not
that
even
is
as expensive
that has
as the
been a
flagship.
really recent development.
It's really recent, but it's nice.
It is nice, but for many years, and we're not talking like, I mean, this is like in the last couple of years, pre-pros have come down. It was as early as 5 years ago. They were like, your your receiver costs $2,000, your pre-pro costs $2,500. Like,
Yeah.
you're joking, right? You literally took things out. You literally took out the things that cost the money and then put in XLR inputs, and they're not even really balanced.
But they made far fewer of them and sold them in
I understand why
lower quantities.
I really don't really care. I don't care.
Economies of scale. But yeah, the thing is, you can very often get a lower model AV receiver that still has all the features you want and still has a full set of pre-outs for hundreds and hundreds of dollars less than the flagship. So that's where,
and frankly, when those Class A Bs are sitting idle, they ain't using. I mean, those amplifiers they're not sitting there like Class A's just sucking up power and putting out heat. They're just literally sitting there putting out almost nothing.
Yeah.
So the money that you're going to save buying a pre-pro, you're never going to offset that with the savings,
power savings
of using a Class D super more efficient. And if you really want to, buy a Pioneer or a Onkyo, right? Don't they all using Class D amps now?
They are.
So there you go. Don't buy one of those. They're terrible.
Well, you could get an Anthem. Anthem is using 6 out of the 11 are Class D, and then the other 5 are Class AB. They're doing a weird mixing matching thing, but if the choice was flagship receiver and all external amps versus pre-pro for around the same price or very close to it, all external amps, then go ahead and get the pre-pro. There's really no reason not to. But if you can get all the features you want for hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and we're very often talking $700-800, you're not going to make up that
the price
in
of a
power
subwoofer,
savings.
basically. Yeah. The price of a sub. I have a really hard time justifying. Now that being said, if somebody walked in here and said, I'm going to replace your receiver with a pre-pro and a bunch of monoblock amps, I'd be like, you are my new best friend, sir, or madam, whoever you may be. I am happy to know you, and you are welcome for dinner anytime, at least until you drop off that stuff, in that which case you will have to call first. So yeah, I can get behind this, but there is really no real need for it in most people's lives. There is occasionally, when you have a very big room, a need for something like that and very inefficient speakers, but rarely is there a need for it. Is it nice? Is it neat? Do I want it? Yes, and yes. But do we need it? The answer is no. Chris first says, thanks for talking about, this is the James Loudspeaker Show guy. Talking about James Loudspeaker. He wasn't expecting an in-depth conversation. He wasn't trying to sound like an ad, so he appreciates it. I know you do, dude. The check better be in the mail, dude. We're going into triple digits worth of advertising going on. Triple digits, sir. Get on the horn with the big wigs. We'll take cash, check, or
money order,
I guess. PayPal. I don't know. Chickens. If you could buy me $100 worth of chicken, I would not turn it away. He's my kids eat a lot of chicken. He's trying to stay informed on the video side of things, so he'd like our thoughts on some of the newest ambient light rejecting projection screens. Do we have any opinions on how well they might perform in challenging rooms with large windows, or perhaps even outdoors? Honestly, if this guy, and I know he has been, because he's a big wig at James Loudspeaker trying to get some free advertising. He has been to CEDIA, and he has seen the light rejecting screens there. And they, even when they first came out, which was not too long ago, maybe 10 years ago.
Several years though at this point,
8 years ago, maybe something like that was the first time I started seeing them. They were really impressive then. And we're talking about on the showroom floor, like above the booth, you know what I mean? With a half of a normal screen attached to half of a light rejecting screen that was whatever. And it was really quite impressive. Now, the problem that we come into here, and this is what we've talked about many times, is not how well they work in high light, high ambient light situations, because many of them work very, very well, spectacularly well. The problem is as soon as you turn off the lights, you are hosed. These things have hot spots and no black levels, and everything ends up looking kind of weird. So Do I have any opinions on them? If you are using them in a situation where it literally is always ambient light, and these things are great.
Right.
But if you are using them in a dual light situation, my opinion is go for something that looks really good in low light, and then just sort of live with it in the highlight situation. You know what I mean? For me, it's more important to have that good low light, deep blacks, accurate color. That is what I want. I don't want hot spotting. I don't want any of the artifacts that you get from some of these screens when you're in low light. But it all depends on how much time you're going to be spending in the different lighting conditions.
Yeah, so over at Projector Central, this is almost a year ago. This is back in March of 2016, but they did, quite a roundup of quite a few of the ambient light rejecting screens that were out there, and it's certainly not completely comprehensive. There's others out there, but it's a good sampling. And what you notice is there is a definite pattern that emerges, which is that the ones that did the absolute best in the what we'll call worst lighting condition, meaning the most light coming in from the sides, light coming in from the top, bright lighting, the ones that did the best there did end up having the narrowest viewing angle. You had to be right in front of it. You couldn't move too far to the sides. And they did end up having probably the most visible texture to them, if there was going to be any texture, because they're using louvers to do that, or they're using a very thick screen coating to do that. So, for example, there's a really expensive one called the DNP Supernova. That's a really expensive ambient light rejecting screen. Its claim to fame is that it has no visible texture. You're not going to notice that you're looking at an oddly made screen. It also didn't perform super great in the worst lighting conditions. It was near the bottom because it was it's got no texture. It's got a wider viewing angle. If you have moderate ambient light,
right,
does much nicer than a white screen. But in the worst lighting condition, couldn't quite handle it. The ones that did super well in the worst lighting, all of a sudden you could see a little bit more texture to them and had this really narrow viewing cone. I mean, there is no magic to this. You have to send the light somewhere. So there are trade-offs on these things. So the one that sort of came out in the top 3 of almost everything was the Silicon Image Black Diamond. That is a really highly regarded ambient light rejecting screen. However, I talked to one guy directly on a forum who got that screen because he's like, you know what? I can never have complete darkness in my basement theater. There's always some light going on there. I'm going to have white walls that are going to reflect some light. I wanted to get an ambient light rejecting screen. And I said, I wouldn't necessarily go for it, but okay, it's your money.
It's your money. It's your room. It's your peace of mind.
He got that exact screen, the Silicon Image Black Diamond, paid a lot of money for it, and he hated it because he could see a texture on the screen. And he's like, you know what? My black levels are pretty darn good without this screen, and I hate seeing this texture on it. And I'm like, well, there you go. Unfortunately, there you go, right? Now, he might have been really happy with a Supernova because that wouldn't have had the texture, and he had low ambient light. Not zero ambient light, but low ambient light, right? So he would have been happier with something that had no texture and didn't necessarily do as well in super bright light,
right,
but, gave him what he was really looking for. But then he would have had to pay even more. So my thought on it is, they are amazing. They're amazing what they can do, but there is always the trade-off. The more ambient light you want to get rid of, the more you're going to pay for it with a narrower viewing angle and a more visible texture to the screen. That's kind of the pattern that emerges.
There you go. Brian is planning a remodel of his first floor garage to add. Does that mean he has a second floor garage as well? Because I that's what it sounds like.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't.
That would be. I have never seen a second floor garage outside of a Hot Wheels set. One of those things, which would be, I think that's pretty awesome. This guy clearly has a lot of money, and McMansion...
Maybe it just means it's not a separate garage or a basement entry garage.
All I'm saying is McMansion Chris is like, dude, a second floor garage. We should hook that up. All right, he's adding on to his house as we speak. It's now 17,000 cubic feet for his home theater because it's now open to his second floor garage as well.
If he added it, he would not have a door. That's not how he flies.
All right, he does not like doors. Man is allergic to doors. He's part vampire and needs to be invited into every room. All right, we got off on Chris. Sorry, Chris. Brian says he's planning a remodel of his first floor garage to add additional bedrooms. It's a big garage. And a bathroom to his house. He wants to use the smaller of the new bedrooms as a part-time theater and the part-time guest room. The room is 13 by 12 feet 4 inches by with 7.5 or 7.5, 7.5 feet ceilings. Guys, you guys throwing me off. You can't use decimals and inches. So 12.33 and 7.5, or 12 feet 4 inches and
7 feet 6 inches.
7 feet 6 inches. Those are your options. Come on, man. Get these notes
just
together.
Go to the metric system where everything's based on 10 and pretty darn easy. But
that's what I'm saying. Just do whatever you want. I don't care if you give it to me in centimeters. I can read centimeters. But you can't go millimeters, centimeters, meters. You can't do that. You got to pick one, stick with it all the way across. That's all I ask. So he asks, is this room too square to use as a theater? Is he likely to have issues with standing waves? Does the 2-foot depth of the closet change the dimensions if the doors are open? Okay, first, is the room too square to use as a theater? An actual square is, you can use it as a theater. You can use a rectangle as a theater. It doesn't matter. You can use it. Is it optimal? No. But then again, everybody who's on this podcast right now, raise your hand if you have an optimal room for a theater.
Ooh.
Looking around for all the raised hands. My hand's not high. My hand's not raised high. So welcome to the club, sir. None of us have optimal rooms. So there we go. Does the 2-foot depth of the closet change the dimensions if the doors are open? Yes.
Yeah. For sure.
It does. That you add that. Yeah.
And I'm looking at that. I'm only seeing one bedroom in the diagram he sent us.
So that's got to be the one, right?
There appear to be 2 closets in this room, so I'm not sure which one. I think since one of them is labeled as being 3.5 feet deep, I have to assume he's talking about the one at the top. But either way, yes, you're changing the dimensions of your room if you open the doors.
If you open both of them, you're right back to having the no. That's not true. So yes, it will make a difference. It will make a difference, and just maybe take the doors off.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, so I lost it because I'm looking at the picture now, so now I go back. 2-foot depth, I guess, okay. Are you likely to have issues with standing waves? You are likely to have issue with standing waves no matter what the shape of your room is. Are you going to have more because your room is a little bit more square? Maybe, and probably. But that's okay. We can deal with those. Mm-hmm. So if you want some pre-wire for subs, would opposing corners or midpoints of walls be preferable? According to the research, midpoints of walls would be preferable.
Right. But we got to figure out what your layout is first.
Yeah, we got to kind of know where your layout is here because honestly, because you got a door in one corner.
Yeah.
It kind of seems to me, but okay, this is going to be hard.
Yeah, you come in the door. There's a closet immediately to your right and a closet to the wall on your left.
Yes.
There's closets on both sides of the door there.
Yes.
And there's appears to be just one window that would be in the opposite corner from where
I think it's a corner. Is it that corner window? Does it do?
Oh, it could be.
It could go all the way around the corner there. It's a little confusing. There could be 2 windows there.
Now, the good news is this is a small room. It definitely can be enclosed because it has a door on it, which means you don't need giant subs in here.
No.
Right? You could use very small, compact subs, which would probably fit just about anywhere you want to put them.
The SB 1000s or something.
SB 1000s, sure. They'd be fine in this room.
I mean, it seems to me like as we're looking at this picture, not anything else, the only place that you have to put opposing subs in here are the top left and front top and the bottom right. Now, depending on whether or not that closet there is open, if the doors are always open, I'm a little because those are sliding doors. Like if they're always open, I would just take them off. Just get rid of them because honestly, those sliding doors, they go on rattle, Hoss. That's going to happen. Those sliding doors are not. That's why I got rid of mine. Mine were the louver doors. And I was like, they gotta go, dude. I didn't even hook up the subs yet, and I was like, you gotta go. You're out. So I took them out, and I took them outside. I was like, I'll put them back later. 2 days later, the Florida heat just destroyed them. I'm like, well, I guess I'm never putting those back on again, and chucked them. So mine stays open. I put all my gear in there and everything else. So,
but I'm looking at this room, and I'm thinking diagonally opposite corners are going to be out of any walkways.
Yeah.
And you're not going to put one in the corner where the door is, so it's going to be the corner across from that.
Unless that closet is always open, in which case you stick it in the closet back there.
Oh, I suppose.
Right?
Yeah.
Then that would be okay.
Yeah.
So I think opposite corners makes the most sense.
Diagonally opposite corners, I think it'll be the easiest to function with, because you might decide you want to orient the theater one way or another depending on what because you said this is sometimes a guest room, so maybe it's going to be like a sleeper couch that pulls out. Maybe that's going to fit better in one orientation than another.
Yeah.
But if you have the two subwoofers in diagonally opposite corners, you're giving yourself quite a lot of space in that room to work.
And I would go ahead and pre-wire for all four corners.
Oh, all right.
I'll be honest with you. Just in case. That way you have the option of changing the orientation of your home theater. If, like Rob says, you're like, I don't know, I want to have it this way. I want to have it this way. Whatever. Yeah. Okay. So he asks, is the room large enough for a 5.1.2? What is a 5.
Well,
5.2.
If we're talking, signals sent, then that's correct. But 5.2.2.
5.2.2 or a 2.4 Atmos system. If so, where should the 0.2 or 0.4 speakers be located in relation to the seating? So his room is 7.5 feet tall, so about 3 feet in front of you and 3 feet behind you. That's going to be my guess. And
yeah, there's certainly the range.
Yeah.
So anywhere from 3 to 5 feet in front of you, 3 to 5 feet behind you would be acceptable. The optimal range would be about 3.5, 4 feet in front of you, 3.5, 4 feet.
I'm happy you're
you.
not asking about 7 point whatever, because it's not big enough for 7 point. It is big enough for 5.
Yeah, I don't really need it. You wouldn't be gaining much in here.
You wouldn't be gaining much. So having rear height speakers, or whatever they're called, and front, top, middle, whatever they're called, front,
top rear, top front. That's all you
it.
need. Yeah.
I think that would be just fine. So 5.2.4 would work very well in here.
But yeah, it's certainly decide on your seating first. That's important. If there is a way to have some space behind that seat, that would be nice. That would be preferable for sure. But given that it's going to turn into a sleeping thing, who knows? But decide on where your seating goes first, and then try to have your top front speakers somewhere in the range of 3 to 5 feet in front of you, and the top rear speakers somewhere in the range of 3 to 5 feet behind you. There you go.
Yeah. All right, Christian. Christian has never been to an IMAX theater. There aren't any in his area. However, there is one in San Jose, a short 200-mile drive. Does he live in Mexico? Where does he live? Like, what's 200 miles away from San Jose? Oh, San Jose.
Well, you can go north.
I was thinking San Diego for a second. Now, understand, Christian, I grew up in Manteca. Now, I know you know where that is because you live in San Jose. So, Manteca is where I grew up. I spent, that's what I spent all my formative years there. I worked at the water slides that used to be there aren't there anymore. Anyway, so I've dated girls from San Jose. I used to drive to San Jose quite often to go visit said girls. And by the way, every single girl in your town is nuts. They're all crazy. San Jose chicks are nutty. Nutty as a fruitcake. Sorry, I'd hate to be the bearer of bad news, but those girls be crazy.
Quite a broad brush to be painting.
They are cray. That's what the kids say. They say cray. I just learned that from a 16-year-old the other day. Anyways, San Jose is short. Maybe it's San Jose, Mexico. Anyways, a short 200-mile drive away. He has a close friend who lives in San Jose, and Christian could drive out to see his friend and see an IMAX movie at the same time if it would be worth it. Dude, I have no idea how cool your friend is. I mean, is your friend cool? Because I would drive 200 miles to see a friend right now. I mean, there's been times I've considered going to Vancouver to see, or wherever you are. Vancouver, right near that area.
Very, very close. If you know Vancouver, then you'll be in the ballpark.
There you go. And that's like all the way, like literally, like I'm in the penis.
Yeah, that's almost as far as you can go with the
of the United States, and he's way on the other side, up in the north. I've been to Vancouver before, which, by the way, is completely full of yuppies. See, there you go. I'm just spreading the love around today. Okay. After a little research, he's become aware that there are many variations of IMAX, and since he has no personal experience with any of them, just reading about the differences can be a little confusing. What should he be looking for in an IMAX theater to ensure the best experience?
Yes. So there was this whole thing that people dubbed LIMAX at one point, because IMAX did come out with digital IMAX. And they allowed existing megaplexes to just retrofit their existing theaters, as long as they required them to have stadium seating, but that was it. As long as you had stadium style seating, they allowed theaters to take their regular, normal megaplex type cinema, install one of their IMAX digital projectors, and call that an IMAX theater. And people were like, "No, that is Limax."
Right.
That's what they dubbed it. So that's what he's afraid of. He doesn't want to go all this way, get excited about seeing IMAX, and then end up in a Limax theater. That's the worry.
Well, San Jose is a huge city. I mean, there is no way that you cannot find an actual IMAX, like true IMAX theater there. I can't imagine why. Really?
I looked at this list. So Wikipedia actually has a great list of all the IMAX venues, and they also do a pretty good job of describing. Now, they have as their default digital IMAX, right? Because there's way more of those theaters in the world. So that's their default. And then they will mention if it is a 70 millimeter, that means the actual full-on original 70 millimeter film IMAX. And right away, there's a big difference there. The original film had a 1.43 to 1 aspect ratio. All right. It was basically the shape of your old television, pretty close to it. Right. Whereas digital IMAX has a 1.89 to 1 aspect ratio, which means it's a lot closer to your HD TV shape, right? It's pretty darn close to that, just a little bit wider than that, in fact. So there's a big difference there just in the shape of the overall screen, and then real IMAX had you sitting considerably closer to it. Because if it's one of these retrofitted theaters, you're sitting quite farther away from this more rectangular screen. Original IMAX had you closer to a much more square-shaped screen. Now, there were the theaters, because almost all IMAX locations aren't using film anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there were the ones that have the more square-shaped screen with the closer seating distance. They converted to digital, but those will be listed as dual projection. They have the capability of being either the original 70 millimeter film or same screen, same seating, but using a digital projector. Then there is the newest one, which is IMAX with laser. And if you can get that, go to that, because that is the original screen size, the original seating distance, but using these new dual 4K laser-driven IMAX projectors, along with their own immersive 12.1 audio system. That's IMAX with laser. If you can get to that, because that's like cream of the crop. But otherwise, if you want the original experience, you're actually now looking for one of the ones that's listed as dual projection. I'm lucky, where I'm living, I have two of those. They've converted over to using digital projectors, but it's still the original screen and the original seating distance. Most other places that say IMAX are digital IMAX. It's the more rectangular screen and the farther seating distance. It's not really the original IMAX experience. So unfortunately, I looked up the ones that are in San Jose, and I believe, I'm going to scroll down to it here, but I believe they only had one that was the true IMAX.
The Tech Museum of Innovation one.
And
the
that,
dome.
yeah, that, like, yeah, okay, so that was what they used to call Omnimax.
Yeah.
Which is a different thing. That's like
it's like wraps around you almost.
Yeah, it's not quite a full hemisphere, but it's almost a hemisphere. Wraps around. That's a completely different thing. That's IMAX Dome, what they used to call Omnimax. So yeah, I'm not actually seeing one in San Jose. These are just two AMC theaters that were retrofitted. So that's going to be digital IMAX. It's still good. But it's not the full IMAX experience. I can't say it is. It's not the huge squarish screen with the close seating distance. It's not that.
I'm looking around. I'm trying to remember which of these cities are close to. It's very hard for me to remember close to San Jose. Now, San Jose is not that far away from San Francisco. So if you're in if you're in San Jose and you could get to San Francisco, and that includes like all of the stuff around San Francisco as well, you can certainly. You can certainly find something there. I'm looking around here, RPX, dual projection.
Yeah, we'll have a link to this, avrant.com, in our show notes. We'll link to this Wikipedia article, or you can just search for a list of IMAX venues over at Wikipedia, and this will come up. And yeah, it's pretty much all the ones in the world, and you'll see there's a ton of digital IMAX theaters. Not so many of the, what people would call true IMAX theaters.
Now, that's what you're doing to ensure the best experience. So,
Right.
But if you're going to go there to see your friend anyway, seeing an IMAX, at least you're guaranteed having, I went to see, what was it the other day? The new Star Wars movie, and I was like, Rogue One, I was like, the sound was just, ugh. It was.
Yeah, and
They
at
say
least IMAX really monitors their theaters, even
Yeah.
the ones that were retrofit. They really monitor it. They do daily calibrations at IMAX. That's part of having the IMAX name on there. You still have to do that, so you are guaranteed a pretty darn good picture and sound, even if it isn't the huge screen in the close seating distance.
okay. So it still might be worth it. You at least you're going to have a good.
Yeah, San Francisco has an IMAX with lasers, so if you can go there,
That'd
be cream of the crop.
Used to be the Grauman's Chinese Theater, Mann's Chinese Theater. Now it's TCL Chinese Theater. That's the only place in San Francisco I would go to see a theater, go see a movie, anyways.
Well, this is actually different. This is the AMC Metreon.
Oh, San Francisco. I was looking at Los Angeles.
Yeah,
I'm
San
sorry.
Francisco.
Yeah, you're right.
Los Angeles has the
Yeah. Sorry.
Mann's Theater.
He says he's realized that his original subwoofer budget of $300 wouldn't get him much, so he's decided to take advantage of Best Buy's 6 months with no interest offer to up the budget a bit to $1,000 or less, and less is better.
Right.
So what should he buy? Do we remember what size his room is, Christian?
So Christian was that fellow who sent us that short video that one time he was upgrading his front speakers, had the home theater in a box thing that he was upgrading.
Nope. It's not
So
ringing the bell.
it was a bit open to the upstairs, and it is open to his kitchen, although his kitchen wasn't huge. But he's coming from a home theater in a box.
Right, so everything's going to be an upgrade.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just pick the SVS that looks like it would fit in your room, basically. And
I mean, for $1,000, you could get a pair of PB1000s.
that is true if you can fit them in his room. That's what it comes down to. For $1,000, can you get those at Best Buy for $1,000 as well?
You can.
All right.
Yes,
well, then
it's the same price.
if you can swing that would almost certainly not only be something that would be good for your room, but be good for your next room as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with that. David, oh my God, there's a video here. I did not notice that, so I have not seen this video. So Rob will have to describe it to us at some point.
Sure.
Maybe you'll splice it in. Rob, you gonna feeling like splicing video in?
In the video version.
Could be.
I suppose that could be done.
I'm
not sure if... it's only about a minute long.
Doesn't have to be. I don't really care. It's up to you. David has made progress on his theater build. Wiring is complete. The projector is mounted to the ceiling, and he's completed his construction of the acoustic panels. Where should he place each of the 8 acoustic panels? In his video, he's leaning them against the wall in his proposed positions. Should any of them be moved?
So he had 2 at the back of the room, sort of in the middle behind where seats are going to go.
Yep.
That seems really good to me.
Yep.
There is an alcove to the left of his screen, so I can show the image of what he had before.
I can't see
so this was a guy who had that really big screen that was actually a little bit too big. To the point that he's probably going to need some keystone correction. So there's an alcove over to the left. He had one panel sort of going horizontal across the wall in the alcove to the left to try and get rid of some of the reflections there. Mm-hmm. He had 3 along the right wall, the right side wall. Okay. So that should try to sort of equal out the alcove. So he's got the alcove on the left and then 3 panels on the right wall. And then I think the last 2 were on the front wall behind his front speakers. I think that was where he had them there for all 8 panels.
That sounds all right.
Yeah, that sounds very reasonable to me. Yeah. where he had them looked pretty darn good. About the only thing I might have said is he had the 3 on the right-hand wall spaced out a little bit from each other. I wouldn't necessarily space them out because you've got that alcove on the left. You want to try to equal the loss of sound going into that alcove as much as you can to the right. I might, sort of maybe a little gap, a 1 or 2 inch gap between the panels, but I'd have all 3 panels on that right wall.
Side by side, I think that'd be the best way.
Side by side. Yeah. That's about it though. Otherwise, looks good to me.
He says that Rob previously suggested that he mount one to the ceiling, but if he does that, the rock wool will sag against the fabric, which won't look very good and will probably block the projector. Any thoughts on that? Why is
if that's the case, don't do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, why is it sagging? It shouldn't sag. It really, really, really shouldn't sag.
He made really long panels though. For some reason, he went floor to ceiling. I guess if you like the look of that better, that's fine.
Yeah.
So since they're really long, if you're hanging them, I could see the middle maybe bowing down a bit.
Yeah, you should be able to support that. Okay. Anyways, if that's going to be a problem, then don't do it.
Yeah.
How about that?
That's okay.
Problem solved. So how should he mount his screen? He had 3 electricians come out to give estimates on moving the electrical box. 2 of them never produced estimates, saying it would be too expensive, and the third came back with nearly $3,000.
Yeah.
A friend suggested building a wall 2 feet in front of the box. The wall would stop where the built-in bench in the alcove on the left begins, leaving access to the electrical box. 2x4s and drywall cheap, so he could build a wall for a couple $100, but then he would lose 2 feet of length in the room. What do we think of this plan? Are there any alternatives? I have no idea.
You also already mounted your projector, which you're going to have to remount because you don't have enough zoom range to get the size of screen that you've got. So you'd have to remount the projector, but I mean that's certainly doable.
Yeah.
I was thinking of somehow like making a frame to hold the screen, because this is a fixed frame screen.
Okay.
I was thinking you make a frame, like you build your own frame out of like a platform on the bottom and 4x4s or something like that, right? It'll hold the screen that is itself movable. Either you put casters on the bottom of that platform, or you just, you have it on a rug and you can slide it. It's because you're not going to need to access that electrical box like all the time.
But you do need to have access for it for code.
But you need to be able to get at it. And honestly, if you only put a false wall, like a semi-permanent false wall, something you can't move without literally deconstructing it, if you only give 2 feet, I don't even know if that's allowed in code, to be honest.
You would have to look that up as well.
Yeah, you'd have to be really careful on that, because you have to have access to that panel. Now, if it's something that can be moved out of the way, that's fine. Code doesn't worry about that. So I would consider making your screen essentially freestanding. Right, you construct your own frame of some sort to hold that screen.
Couldn't he just hang this thing from the ceiling?
But then how do you move it out of the way to get to the electrical panel?
It's just hanging. So you just push it to the side. You push it forward to get back there if you need to.
But he needs to have it as close to the ceiling as he can get it because of the projector.
I don't know what to tell you, dude. Get a smaller screen. I mean, I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
and it's certainly cheaper than what he's saying, but it does seem like just hanging it from the ceiling, even if it has to be super duper tight, which is fine. I mean, you can do that. You just hang like a big wire across the back on the top of the frame that's as taut as you can get it, and then a couple of hooks that you string it across the top so that it is flush with the ceiling. And then when he needs to get access to it, he just pushes the thing forward or takes the screen off. I mean, you're not going to want to do that very often. But then again, when was the last time you went to your electrical box? I've been there once I'm sorry.
Some of the time when you need to get the electrical box, though, is when the power's out. Do you want to be messing around in the dark with a flashlight in your mouth, flipping up a big screen? I'm like, build a frame that can move.
I like Rob's idea better than my idea, but I like the idea of having a smaller screen better than that. That you just move forward into the room so it has a bigger, you know what I mean? Get a smaller screen, move it into the room so it has the same viewing angle.
Yeah, this gigantic screen has caused him problems.
Yeah, it's causing you more problems than it's solving. I don't know that you're aware of this so far. I don't know if this has come home to you yet, but it is really just having this big screen that you have to sit flush to the wall. If you just had a smaller one that you pulled forward, all of your problems go away. It's like
or a retractable screen would also completely solve this problem.
Yes. So he also, speaking of problems, he also has potential problem with the projector mount Rob recommended. The mount itself is 5 inches, not the 2.5 inches that it claimed. And after mounting, distance from the ceiling to the center of the lens is 7 inches, which puts the bottom of the screen only 7 inches from the floor if he wants to avoid using keystone correction. How bad is keystone correction really? Should you just mount the screen where he wants? You should get just a smaller screen. Can we just get a smaller screen?
I want to make sure on that mount, first of all, because if it's twice the size that it says it is, that's horrible on the part of the marketing.
Yes.
But it does mention in the literature that it comes with an optional base. There's the base that attaches to the ceiling that can be removed, and you can just put the mount right onto the ceiling without the optional base. So I'm wondering if there is actually an optional base there that can be removed.
Okay.
Right? You might lose the tilt function from doing that, but they do mention that there's this optional base that's part of it. So I hope that's maybe some of it. Either that, or because it does have a tilt function, is it maybe actually tilted a little bit so that the distance that you measure could actually be shrunk if you tilted it back up. The front part of it.
Yeah.
So two things there. It's entirely possible that they just lied though, and it's actually 5 inches deep.
Marketing people suck.
Which is terrible. Terrible if they did that.
Yeah.
And I apologize. But yeah, other than that, I mean, keystone correction, it's not the end of the world. It
It
isn't the
does
end of the
suck,
world.
though. I mean,
It's less than
you're
optimal.
doing all this work, so you got this great picture, and then you're going to add artifacts potentially to it by Keystone correcting it.
Mm-hmm.
All of which can be solved just by having a smaller screen. I mean, all of this,
Yeah.
all of these issues, every single one of them is caused by the size of this screen. I mean, it's every single one. So, and I know the problem is that you've already bought the screen, and I
Yes.
empathize with you. We've all been in your
Yes.
position where we're like super excited to buy this thing. We bought this thing. We got this thing home that we were super excited for, and we got it. We look at it. We get it in our house. We go, I have made a big grave mistake. And at first you're like in denial. No, we can make this work. We can do this. We can do that. Blah blah blah. And then it slowly over time kind of sinks in that we just have to. We have to do something else. We have to do something else.
It's a bite the bullet moment sometimes.
It sometimes is. Now, if you don't want to do that, and you want to have this screen, and you're going to buy the movable wall and the, poke a hole in the ceiling so you could shove them out into it, or whatever you're going to have to need to do to make this thing work, you can do it. You certainly can do it. You can spend $3,000 for the electrician to do the thing too. All this stuff can be done. But consider the other option, which is not doing any of those things, just getting a smaller screen, selling this one. It can be done as well. Jeb's neighbor talked a Best Buy salesman into selling her a 65-inch LG B6 OLED TV for $2,350. Jeb told her he thought that was a deal. Was he correct?
I would say so.
It looks like, it's an OLED TV. It's 65 inches.
65 inch.
And it's $2,350.
The lowest price I saw it previously was on Black Friday for $2,800.
I would say that was a pretty good deal.
Seems like a darn good deal to me.
It was probably a floor model, but hopefully not. But yeah, I would say that your friend got a deal, and you should take them with you every time you go shopping from now until the end of time.
Good haggler.
Yeah, there you go. Robert first wants to thank James and Nathan for their advice regarding putting regular satellite speakers in his ceiling. Thankfully, it's the ceiling between his first and second floors, so no vapor barrier required. He cut the holes carefully and just used caulk to seal the tiny gap that remained. He also opted for the Dayton APA 100 amplifier that we've recommended. He's very happy with the results. Is that the one I have?
That's the one you got?
That's a very nice little amplifier, by the way. I like it. It's giving me no issues. And he's very happy, especially since he feels he saved a lot of money, which you did. He found some, I guess we have some picks coming up here in a second.
Yeah, I showed those.
I have not seen them yet. Don't spoil. No spoilers. He found some ELAC F5 tower speakers on Craigslist for $200 a pair. Unfortunately, they were sold an hour before he was able to drive down to pick them up. They were going to replace his Polk Monitor 60 towers in his 15 by 12 foot bedroom. So since he mixed out on the ELACs, what can he get for under $400 a pair? That will be a decent upgrade over his Polks. Bookshelves will be okay, but he preferred towers. They must be used for music and watching documentary shows. Towers. And you won't have a subwoofer or center channel in this room, so it's just this pair of speakers and his Denon S900W receiver. $400 a pair.
I'm like, you can get nice bookshelves.
Yeah,
for
it's
$400
really
a pair.
if you really
it's a real challenge to get towers.
Towers are not really. I think in the offering here.
Yeah, I mean, you can get the Pioneer Andrew Jones, but would they be an upgrade over your Polks? I mean, they'd be different. I'm not a huge fan of the less expensive Polks myself. I would probably prefer the Pioneer Towers. But that's me, but I'm like, ugh. Whereas $400 bookshelf speakers, I'm like, oh yeah, upgrade for sure. So
yeah, and $400 bookshelf speakers, you can certainly find if you go to someplace like Accessory for Less, you can look at their KEF speakers and stuff that they have on there. Would certainly be, in my opinion, an improvement over some of the stuff you're looking at. Looking here at the RBHs right now to see how much they are. They're $112.50 each. So
that's the bookshelves.
The bookshelves, $250.
Not the towers.
Not the towers. $250 for the pair. Okay, you're only spend $50 more than you would spent on those other ones, and you're going to get a mighty nice little speaker here, and it's purty, and it plays real loud, and it plays real nice, and that's the R5BI bookshelf speaker from EMP Tech, the Impression series there.
I'm going to recommend Ascend Acoustics, their CBM 170 SE bookshelf speakers. Play very, very nicely on their own. No, of course, they don't dig down to 20 hertz, but we're not expecting that from anything in this price range. Under $400 for the pair. And one nice thing there, if you give them a try, you can send them back completely for free. Ascend will pay the return shipping on those bookshelf speakers if for some reason you don't like them. So that's a free trial. You can do that with those. Any others?
I'm looking at accessories for less right now.
Okay.
Let me do that right quick.
You have options as well.
Oh, wow. Here's
SVS.
The KEF.
Certainly their primes.
Yep. The prime speakers at SVS would be good. The Q100 speakers from KEF are $269.99 a pair at accessories for less.
Okay. Yep. That would be a nice choice.
That would be a good one. The Q.
You can see a pattern developing here, though. All of these are bookshelf.
They're all bookshelf
speakers.
The Q300 speakers from KEF are bookshelf speakers as well. So these would be upgraded over the Q100s at $350 per pair.
That's very reasonable. Those Q300s are nice.
Those are nice little speakers. They are.
Like, just bar none, those are nice speakers.
Yeah. So that's an easy recommendation. If you're looking for something a little bit more slimline, the KEF, the on wall, or they have a speaker stand with them too. The T101s are $400 a pair. $399.99.
All right.
Those would be all right too. I've heard those are decent little speakers. I heard them at a trade show, but whatever.
Right.
Those would be good as well. What am I looking at here? I went to the wrong thing. Now I'm on you. Okay. So all good options for your room. You can certainly find a lot more out there, but you will need stands. You will need stands. You need to put them on something. So that will be an additional cost unless you are a handy dandy sort of fella who can build his own stands. And frankly, building a stand is not brain surgery, dude. It is. And there's really
other things that can be used as stands as well. That is true. So.
And you can buy 4 subwoofers as well and use 2 of them for stands up front and 2 of them as the matching ones in the back.
There you go.
Michael. Okay, so last week our communication lines were all mixed up, but hopefully we have things to sort out a bit better now because apparently I don't really know what he was doing. I think he was calling us or whatever, expecting us.
He used our AVRant offline rant line, which has not been used in a very long time.
But we still get those messages, but he was expecting me to literally pick up and answer his question, which does not happen. Doesn't ring anymore. Anyways, he was really just hoping to improve the sound of his bedroom setup with his existing equipment. It's a 7.1 Onkyo speaker package with a Yamaha RX V665 receiver. When he's listening, he's sitting up on his bed. He's just hoping for even more sound coverage and better imaging from his front soundstage. He heard our suggestions regarding speaker placement from last week, so that should help. That should help. Now he has some more settings question. First, he wasn't totally clear on what we ended up recommending for his surround speakers. He got that we recommended just sticking with 5.1 instead of trying to use all 7 speakers. But since he's sitting up on his bed while listening, does he have to lower his surround speakers as well as his front speakers, or can his surround speakers stay up high? I think they're too high. I honestly do. I don't care sitting up, lying down, whatever. I think they're just too high. I think they need to come down some. They're like right near his ceiling, and he's sitting on the bed. Now, they're still just way too high. They're half as high as they need to be. I think they come down like 2 feet, 3 feet off of that ceiling, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the setup that he has, and since he's sitting up on his bed while he's watching, I'm assuming his back is fairly close to that wall behind him.
Unless he's sitting right in the middle of bed like some sort of weird yoga pose, but it could be.
Right.
Yeah.
Which means that, going to just one pair of surround speakers, not having both pairs of surround speakers up there. On what would be his right side, there's the closet door over there, and he's got this shelf that's behind the closet door, but it looks like you could put a speaker just on one of those shelves. That takes care of the one side. And on the other side, you have this, wall mount that you're already using. You have, a photo or a picture that's hanging on the left wall, but there doesn't seem to be any reason you couldn't use the wall mount to connect that one speaker to that left wall. So they're still going to be close to the corners, but you'll bring them down from the ceiling. I agree that would be closer to optimal.
Yeah.
Right now they are right up to the ceiling. I would say if that's going to be a tremendous hassle for you, if that's really going to be a pain to do, I don't think having your surround speakers up near the ceiling is the end of the world, right? Certainly the front speakers, you've got to bring those down. They're way too high. The imaging problems that you're talking about, you don't have a spread between your front, left, right, and they're way up too high.
Yeah.
So the fronts have to come down closer to ear level.
Yeah.
The surrounds, I'm like, it's not the end of the world to have them up there, but optimally you would lower them.
So his Yamaha 665 offers YPOW, and that's their room correction, but it only takes one measurement. So what would be the optimal way to run YPOW in his case? Should he even use it, and would Odyssey be way better? Well, YPOW with RSC and the more recent, more upgraded YPOW would be better as well. I don't want to say, because you're asking would Odyssey be way better? Well, Odyssey might be better. But I mean, if you got just like the base level of Odyssey, you might end up in the same boat.
Yeah.
So an upgraded room correction system will certainly be better than the one that only takes one measurement. That is, I think, a pretty easy thing to say. You are not in the optimal room. Let's put it this way. And Rob said this before, so I'm going to steal it from him, but I'm giving him credit, so it makes it okay. Room correction is the cherry on top of the acoustic cake. Or ice cream sundae or whatever it is, right? It is a cherry on top. It is not the ice cream. It is not the frosting. It is not all of that. It is just the part that dials in that little bit more to fix the things that you couldn't fix through room correction and placement and everything else. So should you run YPOW? Absolutely. Should you be afraid to turn it off if it doesn't sound very good? Absolutely not. You should be just fine saying, you know what, I tried it, didn't like it, turned it off.
Yeah, I would still use it and allow it to set your speaker distances and your speaker trim levels.
Yes.
It's useful for that. Honestly, myself, since it doesn't really EQ the subwoofer.
Nope.
It doesn't go anywhere below 63 hertz on anything. So it doesn't really EQ your subwoofer. You're using what is normally the most useful part of equalization. It doesn't even do. Mm-hmm. And then it's only taking this one measurement position. I would myself just turn off the correction. I would turn off the equalizer.
I mean, listen to it first, Rob. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but I probably won't.
You will probably end up doing that.
Yeah.
Because it's taking one measurement and your room is, I mean, it is a bedroom and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But at the same time, it's YPOW and Odyssey and all the other ones are not really there to have you just throw your speakers willy-nilly into a bedroom that has no acoustical treatments and all the other stuff that it kind of requires optimal placement and expect that it's going to wave its magic wand, everything's going to get better. It's just...
Which unfortunately is what the marketing sounds like. So I don't blame anyone who thinks, oh, that's what they promised.
No. So we're letting you know. So anyways,
but as for how to run it, you do want to get the microphone at your seated ear level. So figure out when you're sitting on your bed, because that's the normal way you're going to be watching, the microphone should be at the same height as your head when you're doing that. So if that's a tripod or a mic stand, or even just, you stack up something on your bed that gets the microphone to be the same height as where your ears are going to be. And you want the microphone pointing straight up at the ceiling. Because I suspect with what he's saying next, there might have been some aiming of the microphone at some point, or having the microphone right on the bed or on his, the head rest behind the bed. Get it where your head's going to be and have at least 1 foot of free air all around it. So don't have it right back against the back wall.
Even if your head is goes. Right against the back wall,
right,
you are 12 inches off of that back wall anyways.
That's right.
Okay?
But same height, pointed straight at the ceiling.
Yeah. So anyways, he's tried running YPOW in the past, and his biggest concern is that it set the trim level for a center speaker way lower than all of his other speakers. Is that normal? It's not inconceivable that could be the case. It depends on the sensitivity of your center channel. Rob's suggestion earlier that you were aiming your microphone could certainly be affecting this. At the same time, it could very well be that the rest of your speakers are so high. Maybe your center channel was a little bit lower, more directly facing in the right, the orientation it should be. Could be that your off-axis response for your other speakers, which are not supposed to really be as high as they are, maybe that's what's causing this discrepancy.
Yeah, actually, with your surround speakers up as high as they are, and the front left-right speakers, which are a Dapolito array, they have a woofer, a tweeter sandwiched in between two woofers, that gives them a little bit narrower vertical So they're way up high with this narrow vertical. Then you have this horizontal center speaker with wide vertical. That could explain that, the measurement microphone was like, I'm getting a lot more treble response from the center speaker than from any of these other speakers, because all the other speakers are up higher with narrower vertical dispersion. So that could explain it right there. Again, it's coming back to suboptimal placement of the speakers.
Yeah. Get your speakers in the right place first. Run YPOW.
Yep, it's going to solve you a lot of your problems.
And orient your microphone the right way, and you'll be, whatever. So he isn't sure how his receiver is handling his subwoofer. Is it properly applying a low-pass filter? Almost certainly. As long as you have it turned on, I cannot imagine a world in which a current receiver, even, a receiver the last 10 years can't do a crossover.
No, it has bass management, so it is applying.
As long as you have it in some way accidentally turned it off, which is theoretically possible, and in no way saying that you've done it. You're
no.
I mean, we've all done it. Let's just put it that way. None of us want to talk about it, but we've done it on accident. We're like, wait a second, the subwoofer's not on. I wonder what's going on there. Right? It's happened. So is YPOW EQing his subwoofer? We've already answered that. No, it's not. Okay, it's not at all. He noticed one thing in particular. He was trying to get a more even sound throughout his room, so he used 7-speaker stereo listening mode. That made his subwoofer way quieter. So how does he get his subwoofer working properly with his speakers?
So I looked through the manual, and that particular mode, it actually says it first down mixes whatever you're listening to 2-channel only, and then plays that through all the speakers. Well, guess what? It just played full range sound through all your speakers and sent nothing to your subwoofer.
Well, that makes sense.
So that explains what was going on there. In that particular mode, your subwoofer, not just quieter, it probably wasn't playing anything at all, which would definitely sound quieter.
That would. And remember, I mean, your subwoofer is, if I remember correctly, is kind of tucked up underneath, like to the side of your bed in between your...
Yeah.
It's really in a weird location, which is fine. There's nothing you can do about that. But at the same time... You could very well be sitting and probably are sitting in a humongous null.
Well, I mean, when he says it got way quieter with that one listening mode, I'm assuming he's hearing bass when he's not using 7-channel stereo. It was switching to that listening mode that did this, and the explanation is the signal completely changed. It wasn't even sending anything to your subwoofer anymore. So if you want to use what we're going to say is go down to 5 speakers, but you want to use all that, use the Dolby Pro Logic 2 listening mode or the DTS Neo 6 listening mode. Both of those will make use of all your speakers, but it won't do this crazy thing where it down mixes it all to 2 and then takes away your subwoofer. It won't do that to you, at least. So
yeah, I mean,
I like DTS Neo 6 myself.
The way to get more bass throughout your room, or more even bass throughout your room, is to add a second subwoofer, which you're clearly, and not on the market to do right now. Not only that, you are unlikely to have any space in the bedroom for a second subwoofer.
Yeah, no, I mean, his placement options are very
limited. So, I mean, what you can really do if you don't like the way the bass sounds at your specific location, first of all, make sure you are, you've got them level. You got to make sure it's properly level matched. That you're not, when you look at the trim levels on your receiver, it's not saying something like, plus 12 to your sub.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right at its maximum. Yeah,
it could very well be that your sub is just turned too low. It's turning it up as much as it can. Could very well be something else as well. You could run it. It says negative 12, and you're like, it's still not loud enough. Oh, like, okay, you're sitting in a null, and you keep turning up the volume on your sub, and this thing's trying to turn it down because of the other bass that you're not necessarily hearing because of how your head is located at that particular time. So you really need to, if you've got your trim level so that, it seems like it's sitting at a pretty reasonable level, you still think that the bass is kind of wonky. If you have the option with your sub, which you may not, is start playing with the phase. You could start moving the phase knob back and forth to try to do that.
I don't think that sub has a phase knob.
And if you can't do that, you can actually change the distance. From write down what it says, you can change the distance, which essentially is changing the phase. Now, this is going to be something that's going to be very trial and error and probably result with absolutely no net effect that you like. I am suggesting you go down a rabbit hole that will almost certainly end up with a 0 net gain for you, but you will at least have tried. So if you're really unhappy with your bass, I know you can't move your sub. So I mean, I'm fairly confident you can't. This is one thing you can try to get a little bit more even bass in your room. But it's certainly going to be six of one, half dozen of another in the end, because you only have so much you can do, and changing the phase knob, doing a little bit of wipeout, even if it did do the EQ EQ the sub, which it does not, it still would not really touch on the fact that you're in a small room that has no real room treatments and very limited placement options. So it is working properly with your speakers, which is the question that you asked. It's just don't use that stereo mode. His Yamaha also only offers a setting for one crossover frequency. Would a receiver that lets you set different crossover frequency for different speakers be better? It is by definition a more feature-rich receiver.
Yeah.
So is it necessarily better? I don't think in your current situation it is, to be honest with you. I don't think it would be a reason that I would buy a new receiver. There's lots of reasons why you might want to buy a new receiver. Having independent crossovers is not one of them. As a person who does have independent crossovers, I honestly, frankly, and unabashedly tend to ignore them and just set a global crossover anyways at 80 hertz.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered to go through and listen to the speakers and try to figure out whether or not one is just like 80 hertz. Got to go. Thank you very much. Checks in the mail.
And the speakers that you have, this Onkyo package, they don't vary so wildly in the bass response of the speakers that you really need that for the speakers that you currently have. So yeah, if you can set a crossover at 80, 90, 100 hertz, that'll work pretty fine for all the speakers that you have in your room right now. So that's not something that is a high priority at all.
It's snowing where you are, right?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. I'm roasting. It's so hot. You have to come here and bring some of your snow. He asks, we got two more questions from him. He asks, for regular stereo music sources, is it any better to use HDMI instead of Toslink, which is an optical cable? Does it make any difference in the sound quality? Nope. Thank you. If he changes the audio output setting in his Blu-ray player from bitstream output to PCM output, is there really any difference in sound quality? Nope.
Not in this instance.
Nope.
No.
Not from Blu-ray players. It shouldn't be, unless your receiver can't decode Dolby True HD or DTS Master Audio, in which case.
But his can.
Well, I'm saying that's the only time it would make a difference is if you couldn't do that, because you either decode it at the player and send out PCM, which any receiver can accept, or you decode it at the receiver. But either way, it's being decoded. So
that's right.
That's pretty much it. Right. The decoders are the same.
Now, it would be different if you had Atmos, right? If you had Atmos, then you have to send the bit stream from the player into the Atmos receiver. You can't decode Atmos inside the Blu-ray player, but in your case, you're sticking with 5.1. It doesn't matter where the decoding is done. It'll still end up as PCM audio at some point. Now, if you just want to see Dolby True HD show up on the front panel of your AV receiver, or DTS HD Master Audio show up on the front panel of your receiver, so that you know for certain that's what's being sent out, that's okay. That's totally fine. But the sound quality will be the same either way.
I'm looking, dude.
I know.
It's been a long podcast.
I mean, we've done a full 2 hours. I mean, I want to clear up some more of these, so I'm fine carrying on solo. But
no, I mean, we can do a couple more, but I think we should.
You do whatever you feel comfortable, man.
Tim on Facebook wanted to expand his home network, so he bought a power line adapter, which is something that sends internet through your power lines in your home. I've used these before. As soon as he plugged it in, his Infinity Tower speakers that include self-powered woofers started humming. First, should be worried that the humming might damage the speakers. Second, how can you get rid of the hum? Would a power conditioner do the trick? Well, it's a loop. What do they call it? The
ground loop?
I mean, either that or he's hearing the whatever this thing is.
He's hearing the intentional noise, which is the signal that is now being sent through those power lines.
A power conditioner like an APC, it should take that out, right? I mean,
well, it'll knock it down some, but that signal is intentionally pretty darn strong. Yeah, this is a not uncommon problem. People have YouTube videos showing their radios making crazy buzzing, humming sounds, their computer speakers making buzzing, humming sounds, their home theater systems making humming, buzzing sounds. It can be a problem. Seemingly, some of these power line adapters are better than others, but that seems pretty hit and miss. It doesn't have to do with the grounding because this is intentional noise being added to your power line, and that's the only way it could work.
Yeah.
There is a very valid test to see if there is a power conditioner or a power filter that will work, which is you plug the receiving end of this power line adapter into that power conditioner or a power filter, and if it no longer works, then it means the power conditioner is filtering out the signal that's being sent down the power line. So you can test it out that way to see. But
if any single thing within your system is plugged in to a wall, gets power, it could send that signal back into your system, and it means everything has to be plugged into your power everything. Everything.
Yeah, these things cause a problem. It's a very strong signal because you can't just have the power line adapter only work within one circuit, right? Because the whole point of it is to send it from one side of the house to the other. So it has to go all the way into your electrical panel, make it through that electrical panel into every circuit in your house, and get all the way to the receiving end thing. It's a loud, nasty signal that it's throwing into your power lines. Really, the solution is to go with a Wi-Fi bridge or a Wi-Fi expander, right? Something that expands your Wi-Fi network rather than using your power lines to do this. It causes problems that are nigh impossible to solve. That noise has to be there because the noise is the signal.
I still think an APC should be able to take it out, though.
They don't filter that much noise. So
I'm looking at my APC, and it looks like it could do it. Like it's looking like bring it. It's got that can-do attitude that I like.
Whatever
about
money
APCs.
you would spend on that, I would instead recommend spending it on a Wi-Fi repeater.
Yeah, I hate Wi-Fi repeaters. I have to be honest with you; they have not treated me right. Tim is using an older, it's the same guy, Sony DH550 receiver to power 2 speakers in the sub in his open concept living room and kitchen. There's no specific prime listening spot since this is just for background audio for the whole area. As such, should he bother using the supplied microphone and audio setup? If so, or if he is setting things manually, how should he set the distances and trim level? I would definitely use the auto setup. And I would just take the microphone and kind of put smack dab in the middle of the room. I mean, the option, I kind of don't know where your speakers and your subwoofer are. All right. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking to myself, where are you most concerned that the sound will be distracting?
Time aligned and level matched.
No, I'm thinking distracting, right? So let's say his speakers are on the cabinets above his kitchen and a subwoofer is like off to the side.
Right.
People spend most of the time in the kitchen. I want it to be kind of level matched and time aligned for the kitchen. At the same time, I'm worried that the subwoofer is going to be super duper loud because it's way off to the side. So in between, I'm worried about those people over there. So rather than that, I may set it like halfway between the sub and the speakers so that it gets kind of a good mix there so that the people, like when I turn it to a regular volume, the people that are real near the sub aren't getting overblown with the subwoofer, right. And the people that are near the speakers aren't being, they aren't hearing a nice even sound because that's where, I level matched it for, but everybody else is getting something really stupidly uneven. I that's the thing I would be concerned about. I would just kind of like eyeball it. This is not going to be an exact science. I would just sort of eyeball it and say, I'm going to put it sort of in the middle-ish of the space where I want there to be, where I think that it would provide the most people a fairly pleasant listening experience at any volume level.
Yeah, I largely agree. My whole thing was sort of like pick an arbitrary spot. If you were going to pick a spot as your primary spot, figure out where that would be, put the microphone there, do the auto setup there. Because, I mean, it's never going to be perfectly even everywhere. That's not possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement. Yeah, you sort of pick the arbitrary spot where you would like the sound to be, focused. And you just use it. Because you're going to have to pick something, so.
All right, I got to get up and work in the morning. I think
Yep.
we've done enough. There's not that many questions, Chef. We have
I know.
Mark, Abby. It's good to see her back again. See, lots
Yes.
of girls and women. Abby, women. My wife gets really mad when I call people girls, but I do it like I call guys. But I guess that's less of a, to me, I don't know, derisive thing. Anyways, Carl, Will, Jonathan. We can get through these. Jason, Mitch, Charlie. Hector. Oh, there's a bunch of other ones, but no one cares about them because they don't have anything filled in. All right. So you guys and gal will be dealt with next week, and
All right.
we will do that then. So let's thank our listeners of the week one more time. We're going to thank Michael and Larry for their donations.
Yeah, Michael, Larry, thank you very much for those donations.
Fred and Anthony for talking us up to Epson and Accessories for Less, respectively.
Yeah, Fred, Anthony, thank you both so much.
If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. I got a question this week about how long does it take for your question to get answered? As long as it takes.
Well, that was one of the other questions. How do we answer the questions? First in, first out.
Pretty much, dude. That's
the method.
kind of the way we do it. It usually takes us a week or two. I mean, we're on the current week of questions. We finished up last week's of questions, and we're on the current week of questions. And next week we'll finish up this week of questions and go to the next week. So a week to a week and a half.
The earlier you send it in, the better your odds.
You make it an email response between the time that you get it and the time when we answer it on the podcast, or a Facebook post or something like that. But we answer.
Try to.
We answer. We do.
We will answer it. We will answer your question.
We don't care what they are. We do actually care what they are, but we will answer them anyways. You can also go to www.avrant.com and leave us a comment there. If you feel like leaving a donation like Michael and Larry, you can go to the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link where it takes you to a PayPal donation. If you can contact us on Facebook.com/AVRantPodcast. If you want to contact us directly, it's rob@avrant.com, tom at avrant.com. Facebook at First Reflect for Rob at avrant_tom for me. Our producer who monitors the question email address is Austin Pond, and his Twitter is at Austin, TEM Pond, where you can get a hold of him. He's very tall. He's extremely tall.
He put a picture of his driver's license to prove, quote unquote, that he is not super tall. It lists him as 5'10". That is a lie. That is a horrible lie.
It's a horrible lie.
It is in fact 6'10".
The fact of the matter is that is a poorly doctored, photoshopped driver's license of somebody that doesn't even look like Austin. You don't know what this guy looks like. Believe me.
That dude's also younger than I thought, if that birth date is correct.
I'm telling you.
I'm not happy about that, so I think that's a lie too. I think he's actually older.
He is.
He's older and taller. Than his driver's license
That's right.
says.
It's very. You know what?
We didn't see the weight. I'll believe whatever the weight is because he's a pretty thin guy. So.
He is very lanky. He's like, imagine a normal person, and they just stretch them out like really long.
If Austin wasn't upset at us before.
Austin has his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast. And the We Watch Movies podcast, they talk exclusively about Stretch Armstrong, that toy from the
They were inspired by their host.
That's right. 70s/80s, where you could stretch him out and stuff like that, and he's stuck. Austin has had an unnatural fascination with Stretch Armstrong his entire life. The entire podcast is, well, I mean, not the entire. He introduces it pretty, and then he talks about Stretch, and then he starts stretching Stretch on the podcast, and that's all you hear is Stretch Armstrong stretching for like 20 straight minutes. It is disturbing on a very visceral, like you become it's a zen-like experience because you become uncomfortable.
That's right.
And if you can power through that level of discomfort and just listen to him stretching the Stretch Armstrong, and you don't know if he's just continuing to stretch or if he's like letting it go and then stretching it some more. You don't know, but you get to this place of Zen-like meditation where you come. It's almost an out-of-body experience that you have. It is the most amazing podcast I have. We watch movies. It is just this. It brings tears to my eyes just thinking about how emotional I got after 25 minutes of him stretching that thing and me just out of my mind. I was just floating above my body, looking down, thinking, "Damn, that dude got fat." I mean, it was really very unfamiliar. All right, for AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.